Welcome back to Pixels and Pints. I'm Dan. I'm one of your hosts tonight. I'm joined by Peter.
Howdy.
Sorry, I do that every now and then, call you Peter. It's
fine. You and
out.
My mum, it's all good.
Yep. And Tom is away having fun jumping in snow piles and dealing with blizzards in New England in America at the moment. So we are joined by Ben. Ben
Hello.
from 1989 Bar in Newtown.
I will do my best to sit in the great chair that Tom sits in and see if I can.
Well, you're doing all right because you're already wearing more clothing than Tom typically wears to a podcast record.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. I don't think I'll ever get to the dizzy heights of how entertaining and wonderful Tom is on this podcast, but I'll do my best for you guys. I'll do my best.
So I think we've got a little bit of a different show tonight. We're going to run through some news as per normal, and then I've got some hard-hitting questions for Ben because he's got a history in directing and film and everything. And I'm taking this opportunity, Ben, to hit you with a whole bunch of questions that we never, ever get to cover anytime that we're together or talking or anything like that because we get way too distracted with other shit. So I'm taking this opportunity where you're a captive audience to drum that brain of yours for all these things I wanted to talk to you about.
Wow, man. Okay, this sounds terrifying and exciting at the same time.
So I think we'll leave the introduction of your directorial and film history until after the news, and once we hit that segment, if that's all right.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Well, the one thing I did want to quickly add is why. So why have we got Ben on beyond just you know because it's way more important to us that you're on this podcast than just to backfill Tom while he's piss farting around in the States. So this month marks the 5th birthday for the podcast. So
wow,
we did 12 months as 12 months. I think it was maybe 2 years. I don't remember the exact breakdown. I think it was maybe 2 years of Bounty Hunter Banter, which we kind of co-launched in time with Bounty Hunter Brewing that Dan and Chris used to run. And then it kind of took on its own thing and they diverged. We shut down for about 12 months and then Dan and I kind of got back together and said, we really miss just sitting around talking shit and sinking piss, really. So, and that's why Pixels and Pints kind of started back up. So we're in season 5. We've had 4 years of recording over a 5-year period. So it's our 5th birthday. And we really wanted to get you on because you've been one of our good fans and supporters since the very beginning. You've thrown a lot of support behind Dan's beer projects, Bounty Hunter Brewing. Dan's done, I can't own any of it, mind you. So Dan's done beer launches at your bar. We've been a guest on your show, which we then broadcast through us. So we thought it was really important to us to get you on as one of our key supporters over the last 5 years. So it means a lot to us that you're on tonight. So thank you very much for joining us.
Oh man, that's really nice. I've got if the camera was a bit lower, you'd see the massive hard-on I have right now because that's so warm.
See, now
and
you're
fuzzy.
really filling Tom's seat.
There you go. See, that's it. I thought I'm doing my best, guys. I'm doing my best. Thanks, man. And also I think it's good. We've all been drunk together as well. That's the most important thing, whether it was at the bar or other events or that kind of stuff. So that's
Definitely.
a good point to put out.
Definitely important. All right, so let's kick off with some news.
We interrupt this broadcast with some breaking news from the front.
I'm surprised this one slipped, and so Ben's going to be doing this a cappella. The rest of us have a run sheet. So I'm kind of surprised this piece of news slipped past my radar until now. The director from Red Notice, Rawson Marshall Thurber, is directing a D&D hour-long drama as a pilot episode that he's pitching out to the big networks, and it looks like he might get picked up. So they're doing a D&D TV series, or at least that's the intent, and that joins, and this is the part that slipped past my radar that I'm surprised about, that joins the D&D movie coming out March next year with Chris Pine as the star.
That is a shockingly bad idea, but anyway, they're going to do it no matter what.
Well, I mean, if it's coming out March next year, man, they've already finished principal photography. They'll be in post by now. So it's happening, come hell or high water.
It's going to be one of these old Masters of the Universe things where somebody from our world pulled into a D&D world because they need someone to do a huge bunch of dialogue and lore dumps on to fill it in for everybody who doesn't know anything.
Yeah, you need the newbie to be able to talk the user through.
I hate to say I am the newbie. I'm not a Dungeons & Dragons guy, as crazy as that might. I might be kicked off the podcast now for admitting this, but yeah, so exactly. Like
we weren't either until a few years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been playing video games inspired by them for years, right? But it wasn't until about 5 years ago we sat down and played the pen and paper game.
Yeah, I've never done that, and I used to watch the D&D cartoon when I was a kid. I loved that when I was a kid, the Dungeons & Dragons cartoon. I thought it was fantastic. But so I would be one of those people that would need... I mean, that idea of like going into the human realm where some human character needs to do this so we can relate to the character with the D&D characters would suck. Hopefully they haven't done that because... I mean, I like the Warcraft film. I thought that was good, and I'm not a Warcraft fan. I thought that was...
You must be one of two people.
Oh, really?
I
really enjoyed it. I thought it was a good movie. Maybe we'll save that for a whole other conversation.
No. This is the show, man.
It might roll into our conversation later on. So.
It's. I mean, look. The WoW movie sacrificed too much actual plot to play up to fans who understood all the in-jokes, and I hope they don't make the same mistake here. It's really interesting, actually, because Vox Machina, which I might talk about later on if we get some time, is a new cartoon series brought to you by Critical Role, who did the D&D YouTube series of the Vox Machina campaign as their first campaign. And they started as 5 guys sitting around a table.
5 people. I think there's like 2 females in there as well. So.
Listen, it's 2022. Guys is a gender non-specific term, all right? 5 guys sitting around a table.
People might argue with that.
5 people sat around a table and played a pen and paper RPG and filmed it for YouTube. And these days, like 10 years later, they're like a multi-$100 million a year enterprise. They employ like 150 people, and they're now retelling their 10-year-old campaign story that they played out live in real time, where there's no real control from the GM, as a cartoon. And I'll tell you what, I've watched the first 3 episodes. Fucking hilarious. There's no introduction.
I saw the trailer for it and it looked pretty good, but all the people that were on that were voice actors already,
they were.
As far as I understand.
They understood drama, they understood the precepts behind theatre, and so obviously they do a better job than maybe if you brought your girlfriend over to play some D&D with your mates, and maybe. But at the same time, we brought our girlfriends and wives to a D&D campaign, and they thought it was going to be stupid and ended up fucking loving it.
Yeah.
Your wife still brings it up that she misses it.
Yeah, she wants to start playing again. So, yeah,
anyone can play the game.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're really starting to push all this because Big Bang a few years ago really laid the groundwork for all this to be coming back into popular culture rather than deep,
nerdy
dark,
sexy
dungeon sitting, basement sitting guys drinking way too much Mountain Dew and rolling dice.
So fat bearded guys living in their mum's basement, basically. So me, if I lived in my mum's basement, I'm the demographic that used to be portrayed.
That's all right. You're not too rotund these days.
and the other thing that kind of brought that back and made it cool again was what was the TV series about the underverse, the opposite?
What, Stranger Things?
Thank you. Stranger Things. That was built around some mates who were friends because they played D&D.
And then you've got.
Didn't Dan Harmon used to do a live thing in his live comedy acts, like where they'll play Dungeons and Dragons at the end of his sets and all that kind of stuff? Dan Harmon, the guy who made Rick and Morty, half of the Rick and Morty crew. No? Yes?
Don't know. Never seen him play D&D.
Yeah.
I never really listened to his stuff.
Is there a documentary or is there a comedy special with him where they show it and it's something... I'll try and find what it is at the end, which is absolutely useless now for the podcast, but there is some sort of thing where he did a load of I think he did a tour or something, and he toured with playing Dungeons and Dragons live on stage as well. So it seems to be a thing. Yeah.
And look, it's one of those things that it's a canvas, and you can paint really interesting, intricate stuff on it, or you can just follow a book, and it's kind of boring, right? So it is what you make it.
Do you reckon they'll try and make the film interactive? Do you reckon there'll be points where they'll be like, okay, audience, Chris Pine has walked into a room.
Maybe. I mean, the guys, so Rawson Thurber, who's, directing the TV pilot, is saying that he's not planning on just doing a one-shot. Beyond it being a pilot and a pitch to the studios, he's already come up with a multi-pronged, multi-faceted, multi-industry kind of play. So I don't know if he's even got the backing from Wizards, who own the rights now, Wizards of the Coast, but seems like he kind of wants to push this into mainstream as a universe as opposed to just a TV series. And I guess universes like the MCU have proven that you can actually take a franchise like that and make a fuck ton of money. And so anyone who owns a big intellectual property that would have been too unwieldy 10 years ago to do anything with have gone, well, those fuckers are making a fortune, why can't we?
Yeah, I mean, it's really coming into its own, everyone at the moment. League of Legends have just had that
series. They got the cartoon on Netflix.
On Netflix. I forget what it's called. I've watched the first episode, and it's really good. I mean, you're getting a lot of people that understand the lore and the material to actually write these things. If they can do that, it's probably going to be successful.
They can do a better job than Game of Thrones. Second piece of news, just really quickly, Witcher Season 3, it's kind of a 10-second thing. They've confirmed they're going to be focusing on the Time of Contempt book, which is the second book in the major series.
I don't even know why they say they're going to bother focusing on a book, because they did not in any way, shape or form focus on the Blood of Elves in Season 2 like they said they were going to. So, like they said it was. So they just need to now just do their thing because that's what they're doing. And it's good.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's where the two conversations between Wheel of Time and Witcher diverged, because they both went off script. They both did their own thing. And I think Witcher they did really successfully. God, we're not going to talk about. Any comment there, Ben? Have you watched either?
The Witcher's interesting. It is basically low-budget Game of Thrones. Sorry, guys. But I like it. It reminds me of Xena Warrior Princess, because they're like, we have a set where we're going to set most of the series. We spent all this money in this big set, and it's where the Witchers live, in this big room. So we're going to film the entire series around this big room, okay? Because that's all the money we've got. Is that okay? Yeah, that's cool. We'll write it around that big room. All right, cool. I mean, I liked it. I'm being facetious. I like The Witcher. It's good to see Henry Cavill basically walk around going, fuck, all the time. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's just...
He's the perfect actor to play that role.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that about the one set, the big room. The big room doesn't even enter into the freaking that book, I don't think. I don't even think they end up at Kaer Morhen at all in Blood of Elves.
And conversely, though, Kaer Morhen...
I don't think they end up there at all in any of the books.
Kaer Morhen is still pretty darn central as a concept to the Witcher universe, though. So they kind of had to do it justice if they're going to put it in the series. And if you're going to do it justice, you need to spend some time there.
Yeah, I mean, like for somebody like me who's not read the books, Marnie, my wife, is reading them right now. It kind of made sense because I was like, oh, okay, I've just learned that witches are made from this thing, and they're not born with their powers. They're made from and it comes from this place, and this is where they're trained, and blah. So for me, not knowing that, I was like, okay, I get the storytelling here. I understand the characters now, and I haven't read the books, so I think that's probably why maybe, I'm enjoying it.
I haven't read them either.
Oh, there you go.
I think playing the video games, you get a solid grounding, probably less lore and culture that you don't directly interact with.
More grinding.
No, none of that, actually.
Really?
It's one of the very few games you could list as perfect.
Oh, man. I've got Witcher 3 on the Switch. I've played 10 minutes of it. I'm yet to devote a serious amount of time to it. I need to do that.
Whereas Dan's finished the game like 11 fucking times.
Oh, man, really?
I've finished Witcher 2 at least 4 or 5 times, and I've sunk something like 350 to 400 hours into Witcher 3.
Wow. And finished it? Or is it one of those games that, because there's so many side quests and like to 100% it, it's like...
Finished it multiple times over.
It's actually not that bad. It took me less time. So in order to get the Platinum Trophy, you need to finish everything. All the side quests, you need to win all the games, you need to go to every fucking town and win against the local board game player in their mini game and stuff. And it probably took me about 100 hours. If I compare that to 2018's God of War, 130 hours... If I compare that to Horizon Zero Dawn, which I just finished, I think I clocked 190 hours on Horizon, so it's actually not that long a game.
That's interesting.
But it's more enjoyable than those other two games I just mentioned.
Oh, okay. Because I've finished both of those two, like God of War and Horizon. I really enjoyed those. I will get to it at some point. That's why I got it on the Switch, because I'm like, I can just carry this anywhere. And then you're like, well, I've got it anywhere, but when do I have time to play it?
Yeah, it's always the case.
On the toilet, that's what I need to do. I need to play on the
toilet. We've completely forgotten to mention that we will be trying some Australian craft beers on the podcast tonight. Shall we slide that in there like a?
We didn't tell anyone.
That was a beautiful segue.
You didn't tell anyone what we were doing. We're Pixels Bites. These are three of us, but everyone who knows. I mean, anyone's going to come in on season 5, episode 2 knows who we are.
Yeah, we got.
I thought this was a podcast about The Witcher and Dungeons and Dragons. Like, what's?
And this is the latest. No, this is a knitting podcast, mate. We're about to get into the latest drop stitch.
Hey, I do know a professional knitter. I can ask her to come on if you'd like.
I literally just divulged the maximum of my knowledge about knitting.
She went to university to study knitting.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to... I'll be back in a couple of minutes. Anything I could say from this point, I'm going to get in trouble for.
So I haven't got much light in here, unfortunately. I've got Hawker's from Melbourne, the Mango Pineapple Kettle Sour, 5.5%. It's a lot of glare off my screen tonight, unfortunately.
I was going to say, you can't read anything, but you look like Casper the Friendly Ghost again.
Yeah, I know. I cannot get the lighting right in this room.
Trop Tart.
That's a good name.
Trop Tart. It's got a nice sort of 60s patent design on the label, which is pretty cool as well. Big 440 ml can. It's not overly sour, but the flavor expression's really good. The pineapple and the mango are not overpowering. It's all blended really nicely, and it's a very enjoyable 5.5% kettle sour.
Nice.
That's
not
cool.
A 5-star, Peter. Probably a
okay.
3.5.
Very, very quickly, because I've always wanted to ask this question: the difference between a sour and a kettle sour, is it literally because the brewing process?
Well,
I'll
let the brewer answer.
There's about 3 different ways you can do it. You can do a sour mash, which is what we do in our brewery. So mash everything in, bring it down to 40 degrees, throw some raw grain on top of the mash, leave it for 48 hours, all soured, do the runoff, do the boil, run it off to the fermenter. You can do the kettle sour.
How many gaps do you want to leave in that description? Why are you adding grain? What is the alcohol? What is the yeast doing to change? What's making it sour, Dan?
Well, it's all the same thing. But so there's lactobacillus on the outside of the grain, natural lactobacillus. So we don't add a culture of any form. We might try a proper lab made culture at some stage rather than doing it naturally. You do get a little bit of a very much more of a tart, and a tart hit, and it can go a little bit over the top into kind of a metallic hit if you do it for too long in the natural mash soured kind of way. The kettle sours you do all the way up to the boil stage, and then you bring the wort. So you run all the wort out of the grain, out of the mash, so it's just liquid. Then you throw a culture into the kettle and leave it for 24 to 48 hours till you get to your desired soured level. Then you do your boil and you run off to your fermenter.
Am I allowed to interrupt you and ask questions?
Sure.
I just have, so you're stuck with it now. So when you say culture, are you talking about a specific strain of yeast, a souring yeast?
No, so it's all lacto.
Okay.
So
which is a different bacteria completely.
Bacterias, yeah.
Cool.
So lactobacillus, the single... Well, actually, there's different lactobacillus levels, and some of them are bad. So botulism is something that you can get from a bad kettle sour, or any sort of sour.
Does that make you shit yourself? Because it sounds like you should shit yourself if you've got botulism.
Yeah.
Because the word
you could also die.
Yeah. Oh, could you? Oh man. Okay. Yeah. That's from a sour.
Well, botulism used to kill people.
You're like, I'm really enjoying this sour. Oh no. It's not maybe really.
Oh, I think I have the squirt.
Yeah. It's like
botulism is bad news.
Oh man.
And then The other way you can do it is, or there's a couple of other ways, but it's all sort of brought in together. Whether you use a wild yeast that will sour as well as ferment, or you can put a lacto and a souring yeast into the fermenter. There's quite a few different options now on that back end of it if you're going to do it in the fermentation process. There is yeast that will create lactic acid, which gives you that sourness. It's not a lactobacillus culture. It's actually a proper Saccharomyces yeast that will create lactic acid. That's quite a new way to do it. Wild yeast, because there's a whole bunch of different lactose in the bacterium in wild yeast that will make it go sour. And there's actual lacto fermenting cultures that you can get as well. That back end is left for very clever people like Wildflower and Larrikins and people that have dedicated breweries to be dealing with all that sort of stuff. Not too many of us brewing plebs will touch that end of it because it can be quite detrimental to equipment, and sometimes if you get certain things inoculated with that sort of bacterium on the cold end, it can then sort of infect your whole brewery. So that's left for the clever people that are dedicated to doing that sort of stuff. The rest of us stay on the hot end.
In fairness, Chase from Wildflower did first. He was first. Was he not a biome? Is it Chase?
Topher.
Oh, it is Topher.
Yep.
Sorry. Sorry, Chase is their new head brewer. Topher's the founder. So Topher was a biochemist before he started making beer.
Yeah, biochemist, bioengineer, something like that.
And he did, because I've read a few articles from him. He's an interesting guy, but he spent something like 10 years perfecting his own wild strain of yeast into essentially a proprietary. It's now his.
Yeah.
So he went out and collected sticks and shit from the bush. That obviously there's wild yeast everywhere. Every time you breathe, anyone who suffers from allergies in spring can tell you about pollen and yeast and all the other shit in the air. So he went and kind of tweaked his own, isolated it, and that's the yeast he now uses in his brewery. But he also goes into barrels. So once the sour's out of the kettle or out of the normal process, it'll then go into barrels to continue fermenting. And he did build a brewery around the space and the gear specifically for that process.
Yeah,
but it is quite specialised.
I said that back end process is left to people like that.
I was agreeing with you.
Yeah, and they're great beers. Oh my god, I got a bottle of Wildflower at home, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna wait for the right occasion to crack that open, because it's like, they're like wine bottle sized beers. They're great, perfect for sharing and with a meal and all that kind of stuff.
They won't last forever, though.
So it has to be brewed in a kettle. Does it, for it to be a kettle sour? Going back to my question.
Sorry, I didn't quite get that. Well, a kettle is one of the stages. Boiling in the kettle.
It's a kettle. It's a kettle, yeah? So the kettle sour has to be in a kettle. Yeah. I could have fucking answered that myself. Jesus Christ. Fuck.
So what are you drinking? Are you drinking anything at the moment, Ben? Or are you,
yeah, sorry.
I couldn't tell if that's orange juice.
Hop Nation's Freak of the Week Hazy IPA. Just because, like everybody else at the moment, I'm loving hazy beers. So a lot of haze is happening. So this is the hazy IPA, and I like Hop Nation. I hadn't had one of their beers for a while, so it's tasty, it's juicy, it's everything you want from a nice haze. Not too bitter, all that kind of nice, lovely sort of mouthfeel. What other words can I use to make beer sound delicious? It's wet.
We're moving on. How many pixels out of 5 pints would you give it? That's fucking Tom's rating system.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, Dan, you first. You started with your beer. I'm jumping in.
You said 3.5.
Yeah, I reckon 3.5, 4. Yeah, it was good and well balanced, but there was just maybe could use a little kick more.
Not sour enough
with something. Not sour enough, maybe. Yeah, that might be. But I'm with Pete. I like the whole mouth puckering, face
like sucking on a lemon
sourness.
Yeah. Because sorry, you've got it.
Go.
What you got? You got a sour face. You haven't got a sour face. What are you talking about?
No. I got myself a new tooth, so the sourness doesn't hurt me anymore. So that's fantastic.
Oh my gosh, when did that happen?
Oh, yesterday. That's why we're recording tonight.
What the heck? Have you not
and for those kids playing at home,
are you okay?
My jaw's a bit sore, but other than that,
stop moaning about it. Drink through it. Jesus.
Well, that's just from all the cock he was sucking afterwards. I just for those playing at home, if you drink a sour beer and it makes your tooth hurt, go and see a dentist.
Yeah, and I didn't for a long time. That's why I've got a new tooth.
Wow,
man, that's awesome.
Ben, out of 5, how's your beer?
I've mine 4, actually. I'm really enjoying this. This is the second batch of it I bought. So, yeah, I'll give it 4. 4, was it 4 pixels? Is that how it goes?
Out of 5 pints, yeah.
Pints?
Whatever comes out first.
It's basically just
Tom's fuckery.
Tom's fuckery, that's right. So my beer, my first beer, is also a sour, which it shouldn't surprise anyone who listens to the show because I'm a sour freak. So it's Range Brewing's Raspberry Sour Ale.
Ooh, nice can.
I can get that to focus. Yeah, it's 3.9%. It's another 440ml can. I actually wasn't planning on drinking any sours tonight because I've got such a good range in the fridge. I was saying to the boys before we started the recording that I walked into Cuddy Cellars. I didn't realise they'd reopened. I drove past them yesterday and went, oh, those fuckers' doors open. I'm going in there. And it was like a kid in a candy store. I grabbed a whole armful of beers and I took them back to the counter and he started ringing them up. And I said, no, I'm just putting them down, mate. I'm coming back. And so I ended up with 2 armfuls of beers. So I got a fridge full of good stuff. But this, I thought it'd be a nice way to start. Yeah, it was at the front because the fridge is now full of beer. I'm a bachelor, so that's what fridges are for. That and spoiled milk when I thought Tom might want a coffee, and that's still in there from Christmas. Fruited sour ale with raspberry. Allergens, gluten, barley, wheat, and raspberry. It's okay. I mean, look, it's not that tart. It's definitely sour, but it's not that tart. You do get quite a lot of raspberry, though. I give them points for... Because raspberry is one of those flavors that can easily be overpowered in its subtlety with the sourness, but you get a shitload on the nose and quite a lot on the palate. So I'm pretty happy. I'd give it a 4 out of 5.
It's good.
High scores all round.
Nice and refreshing.
Do you guys tally up the scores at the end and see who had the best beers? Like, you know.
Fuck no. This is like the first time that we've all done a round of actually putting a number against the beer.
Well, it's the first time we've mentioned on the podcast. I've had to do it for 5 years on Untapped, and I have to listen to Dan's description and then interpret that into a score of 5 for Untapped.
Oh man, you should totally put it in the show notes. You should put like everybody's like, you know, how many pixels out of 5, and then who won at the end, and like, you know, tally them up and like, well, Pete drunk all the best beers in this show. Go and buy them, folks. And then you can go to the breweries and go, hey, I just bigged up your beer. Can you sponsor us next week?
I don't know about sponsorship. That'd be a nice outcome, but not one we've been actively seeking. But we do. I mean, look, we tag in to all our social media. We tag all the breweries. In half the breweries we talk about follow us on Insta. So
yeah, that's
it's a bit of a reciprocal friendship. That's what I love about
what are you
industry,
doing?
man.
Why are you not sending these guys free beer? Come on.
Well, I don't know if they actually listen to the podcast, but they follow us on socials, so it's a lot easier to click a button than to spend 3 hours listening to us drone on. We'll just quickly finish the news. So Microsoft just acquired Activision Blizzard. This really has become a bit of a pissing contest now between Sony and Microsoft as to who can hoover up all of the biggest studios and fuck the gaming industry forever. So,
yeah, Sony just took on Bungie.
Yep. And before that, MS bought Bethesda. Yeah. So the future of video gaming could, and we're obviously hoping not, and these fuckers still want to make money, right? So they're still going to want to pitch their games to both camps, but it could end up being quite a polarizing move.
Oh,
so,
don't lie. You'll buy an Xbox as soon as something comes on it that you want to play.
Yeah, but I'll do it and I'll whinge on the podcast, Dan. So Activision Blizzard. So we're talking Overwatch, Diablo, Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, StarCraft, and probably the one that'll affect you the most, Dan, is Candy Crush.
Yeah, I'm an avid player.
And the last part is the Batman is already talking about a sequel.
Wow, you talk about my hard segues.
So
Jesus, we go from
It's the last piece of news. Listen,
straight into the Batman.
So
we're half an hour in.
So sorry. So you guys do trailers at the end of the show, right?
No, we'll do trailers as we come in after the break.
Okay, all right. Cool.
So about the midpoint.
Sorry. Okay, cool. I was just going to spoil the trailer thing. That's fine.
No, it's fine, mate. You're our guest, mate.
I think we can spoil this one here because I said to Pete, every time we've done a podcast for probably the last, not every time, sorry, every time a Batman trailer has been released, we've done a podcast the following week and not mentioned at all.
Yeah.
And this is how much this movie is on our radar.
I don't
hold
care.
a second. So you guys are not excited about Rob Pattinson at all as Batman? Really? Oh.
Only if he sparkles in the moonlight, Ben.
No. I think he's going to be good. Sorry, I'm putting it out there. Robert Pattinson's a really good actor. He is a really good actor.
I've been very vocal on here saying that I think he's actually going to play a very good Batman, and I have faith in. Is it Matt Reeves that's the director?
Yeah.
I have faith in their interpretation of it. I really think it does. They've actually really let me down with some bits and pieces that they've chosen to incorporate, and that's only come about in the last two trailers. I think Zoe Kravitz is a fucking fantastic choice for Selena Kyle.
She's in a couple of other things coming up too, which is going to be interesting to talk about later.
The guy who's playing, I think the casting's great.
Colin Farrell is fucking
Jim
Oswald
Gordon,
Cobblepot.
Colin Farrell, the young guy that's playing the Riddler. I think their casting is excellent. It's been some aesthetic choices that they've done, especially around Selena Kyle's crazy Nosferatu nails. And what was the other thing that got me? Oh, it's a fucking PG rating. Like, what the fuck are they doing?
Yeah, but that's going to be the studio, man. The studio's going to be like, look, we just need to make all the money we can out Batman, so we need to make sure we can get kids in to see it. Blah 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 blah. You know, so
but as consumers, we don't really care why. We just care that it is, and it is fucking annoying. It should have been MA at minimum.
I mean, this is one of the things that they've pitched this big dark universe for this Batman movie, and it's now a PG movie. Like the first trailer, you saw him beating the living piss out of one of the Joker henchmen, one of the clown henchmen. You saw him beating him like half to death,
senseless. Yeah,
and off camera.
You know it's not going to be in the movie.
Off camera. So I had real faith that this was.
I can tell you why, by the way.
That was going to be a really lead into this being a very heavy comic book Batman universe where a lot of people die brutally, and this Batman was going to be dark and hardcore, and I thought we were going to get that with Affleck, and we got some really great moments with Affleck.
Some of the best Batman on the silver screen, on the cinema screen, I think we've ever gotten was in BVS when he was beating the snot out of those guys in the warehouse.
Yeah.
It'll continue to be the best Batman-esque scene, in my opinion, that we've ever seen. There's been other movies that have been far better at portraying him as a whole, but I don't know. I'm interested to see the plot. I mean, you know, Robert Pattinson has talked a lot about this being a very different Batman from what we've seen on screen before. It's a much more personal, dark journey for the character rather than it being within, you know, a larger, broader setting. And it's usually, you got to admit, most of the Batman movies have been focused more on the plot is being dragged by an antagonist. Whether it's, you know, the Penguin, it's the Joker, it's always the antagonist dragging the story. I'm getting the impression this is more driven by the protagonist in Batman. But it's PG for one very simple reason. They've already started filming the two spin-offs. And if you made an MA or an R-rated film, it'd be very hard to link that into a PG-rated TV series spin-off and pick up fans of the movie as your starting point for the pilot in the TV series. So it is just about milking that cash cow.
Yeah, it's a shame we don't live in the 80s where you could make a film like Rambo, RoboCop, and Terminator and Aliens and still make kids' toys and kids' cartoons about the said films as well.
These days, if you're abstract,
fucking RoboCop, RoboCop, and you got that
RoboCop cartoon
melting in the
I still remember that card.
So
But with Batman, didn't they pitch this as it's going to be more about him being the world's greatest detective? So you're getting more of a detective story with this one compared to other Batman, which is great. I mean, you can already see that from the trailer. Like the trailer looks like it's. I don't guarantee. What the fuck am I saying? I think that they're probably showing you all the action, as much action stuff as they can in the trailer. Because what do you want to see? I want to see Batman punching people, getting shot at, taking on hordes of enemies, rah rah rah. But there's probably going to be so much more of him being a detective in this one that they've actually.
I hope so.
They've kind of like hinted at with him and Gordon looking at clues, trying to suss things out and all that kind of stuff. So it could be, even though it's a PG, maybe we're not going to see him sort of like, beat the shit out of somebody, but maybe we're just going to see him being a really good detective. One of the best scenes out of was it The Dark Knight? The one when he's like analyzing the bullets.
Yep.
And he's got the guns, and he's. Yep. I love that scene. I'm like, this is Batman being Batman without being Batman by battering people like Batman. Like,
we are in an era where a technology focus in that Batcave, analyzing clues, is sexy enough.
Yeah,
like we have enough movies built around tech as a core concept now that you can easily do that.
The only problem is that they're going really low tech with everything else that he's got. So I think we're going to see some really low tech forensics.
You're talking about the muscle car Batmobile?
I'd love it. I'd love it if, like, that's remember the first trailer when they're walking in and they've got the body and all that kind of stuff. I'd love it if he just pulls out a fucking notebook and just starts taking.
He's got to lick the pencil before he starts writing.
You know what I mean? It's got like a fucking bat logo on it. It's like
the little ears.
Hold on, guys.
Maybe some little ears on the top.
Yeah, exactly. Like, hold on. Yeah. So, all right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sure. Okay. I'll give you a ring if I hear anything. And he's gone.
Chalk outline.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's it for the news. Beyond the two spin-offs, one's going to focus on GCPD, so Gotham City Police Department. Which is going to be another
Gotham. Why are they doing it?
I don't know why they're doing it again.
There was a fantastic comic book run years ago called it was done by Ed Brubaker. It was called.
While Dan thinks about what it was called, the other one is centered around Colin Farrell's Oswald Cobblepot turning or transitioning into the Penguin.
That'd be cool.
So we know Colin Farrell is playing Oswald in the movie, but clearly he's not going to be a full-blown Penguin by that stage. I suspect something bad's going to happen to him in the movie that's going to start that transition process. But yeah, I haven't really been that excited. Gotham Central. I just haven't been that excited for the trailers or the movie. If they do the muscle car as part of a kind of detective noir throwback to that period, then I'd be okay. Maybe that's why they've done it that way. Yeah, I don't know.
Well,
it does have that kind of detective noir feel to it.
It does, I reckon. Yeah, it's going to be a detective.
They've just got to have the balls to do it all the way. Because there's been some movies that recently that have kind of made plays in certain directions like that, but they haven't had the guts to go whole hog to pull it off. And it just ends up being feels like a weak throw at it.
If you don't have Batman punching somebody in the face, though, you're going to get upset. Let's be honest.
You have to.
Yeah, exactly.
It's Batman.
Yeah.
Like,
so it's because I'm Batman. I like the fact he's doing the
Superman
voice.
not flying.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I'm vengeance. The answer's vengeance. I'm so angry and angsty. Apparently, I'm the Cobain of Batman.
Still reminds me of the College Humor fucking Batman YouTube series.
Yeah.
Hopefully you've seen those, Ben, because they're fucking hilarious.
I think I have. I think I know the ones you're talking about. But hold on a second. We're talking about Batman. Have you guys even touched upon Keaton coming back as Batman in other podcasts?
Yeah.
Because that's fucking exciting. And he's announced to be
in the Flashpoint.
He's going to be in the Batgirl film as well. Do you guys know that?
Yeah.
I
did hear that, yeah.
Because basically, Affleck's gone, I don't want to be Batman anymore, I'm done. And they're like, oh, we need a mentor for Batgirl in the Batman films. Who we got? And Keaton's like, hey, I'm right here. So yeah, he's going to be he's going to be back as Batman twice. I mean, that's a gift. That's a gift.
It is.
For all of us Batman fans, just seeing Keaton back. I think it's going to be great. I'm so excited about the Flash film. I feel like if you're a Batman fan, then, there's a lot of, this is the year of the Bat, right? So it's going to be pretty exciting.
I hope he gets more than just a guest appearance in the Flash. I hope I hope he plays a pretty heavy Thomas Wayne position in the Flashpoint story. I hope it's not just a Flash
token gesture.
With the other flashes, and it's just a different dimension, and he's on screen for 5 seconds before they flick off to the next dimension.
So it ends up being a gimmick that we even knew that he was in the movie. That would be very frustrating.
It would be very disappointing if they didn't utilize him more, and the fandom that is around seeing him as Batman back again.
I'm Batman.
I'm the Batman.
I reckon. Well, the teaser trailer they put out seemed to hint that he's got quite a big part in it, right? Because it's him basically talking to the Flash, like his voice going, "You've came from blah 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 universes and and you want to save this one," and it's like, ooh, okay, interesting. Give me more Keaton.
Hopefully, they stay fairly true to the Flashpoint animated movie, because it is one of the better. I mean, DC do animated movies really fucking well.
Oh yeah,
they do. They do live action fucking terribly, but the animated stuff's amazing. And Flashpoint's easily one of my favorites.
I don't think I will, Pete, so I don't want you to be disappointed, but I don't think it's actually going to have anything to do...
Listen,
I think it's going to have the vaguest whiffs of fucking the actual Flashpoint to it. I don't have faith in that whatsoever, that it's going to follow that.
Well, my life is a disappointment, Dan, so it's just par for the course.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be interesting? Didn't they cast? Is it Henry Dean Morgan? Is that, have I got the actor's name correct? Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Because they cast him as Bruce Wayne's dad in the Batman v Superman, so they could do the Flashpoint film. So I'm hoping that they do incorporate that. We see his version of the Batman that became, Bruce Wayne's dad being Batman rather than Bruce Wayne because Bruce Wayne passed away, blah, blah, blah. I'm hoping that they do something with that. That'll be really fun if they actually, And
he was badass. And her as Joker, Martha as Joker was fucking sick too.
We've mentioned that several times because, to quote you, Ben, I have a massive hard-on for Jeffrey Dean Morgan being Thomas Wayne in the Flashpoint series. I fucking love him. I think he's such a fantastic actor that really rolls into the parts that he plays.
He's just so charismatic.
Yeah.
Some people are just so charismatic. They're gits, you know what I mean? Like him and is it John Hamm? He would be a good Batman. People have said for years that he'd be a good Batman. Imagine John Hamm as Batman. He's got the chin, the whole thing, So
he does. He seems a little too. I was really thrown out at the end of spoiler alert, Baby Driver, when he turned against everybody. I was really thrown out. I see John Hamm as this really gentle kind of actor. I
haven't seen him in much, I have to admit. Like, he's been in shitloads of really good stuff, but I have to admit I haven't watched too much of his stuff. If they ever release Top Gun Maverick, I'll watch him in that. But usually,
I forgot
that's been like, what, 3-year delay now?
Yeah,
they could have made
crazy.
a whole nother movie in that space of time. I know his stars in Mad Men, but I've never watched Mad Men. So for me, he's a good actor, but he's always been a kind of a background cast member for most of the stuff I've seen.
Do you guys see? You've seen Toast? Have you seen Toast of London, the show with Matt Berry? So Matt Berry plays this really shit actor called Toast, and he's the Toast of London, because he's a really crap. And there's an episode where he meets John Hamm. And John Hamm's playing himself, and like John Hamm is just like super charismatic, wonderful, and he's just obsessed. Just imagine an episode where Matt Berry is being obsessed with John Hamm, and it's the best thing, the best thing ever to hit television. That's really
cool.
Good. Yeah, it's cool. Sorry. Okay.
I might not at all. I might let you guys chat for a bit. I'm just going to go grab my other beer and disappear for 5 minutes to feed the cats because they're banging at the door, and it's 7:30, so half an hour late.
Oh, I won't talk about my next beer until you get back, so you can mark it and write what you need to write and go for all that.
Figure out how many
pixels out
how many foreskins out of how many pints or whatever it is.
Am I rolling into the next segment with my hard-hitting questions for Ben?
Yeah. I'm not going to be that long. It'll be 2-3 minutes.
No worries.
I smoke quick.
Okie dokie. I smoke quick. Done. Get into my veins.
He inhales them at times.
That's funny. I presume Pete then just cuts this bit out, right? Does he do
he'll leave it in.
He'll just leave. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, he can cut it out if he wants to cut it out, or he can keep going with it. Yep.
Wow. Okay. Well, we can talk about nonsense then and see if it gets kept in. What can we talk about? See if he actually cut it out.
Well, he told me continue with my questions. So
okay.
Or do you want to? Well, he might want to listen to it too because he hasn't hit, but he can listen back to it. Do you want to give us a brief background history of your what you've done in the film industry and your directorial, not Wikipedia, back catalogue?
You're making it sound like it's a really exciting story.
Hey, man, I'm excited about the few little bits and pieces that you've told me over the years with your Bill Murray story and your Ivan Kershner story. And...
A bulk of my work has been working on low budget television, Dan. You know what I mean? Like there's been a couple of like moments where I did some cool stuff, like when I started my career in advertising, editing, children's television, that kind of stuff, and then transitioned into doing live action stuff, and was always doing short films, music videos, and then did a lot of documentary stuff and some really not trashy, but like some really low budget travel programming with my production company Rampage and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I mean, I'm very happy to answer your questions, but I'm not quite sure how well I can pitch myself as this amazing human being that did stuff in the film. I've just got lots of weird, fun stories through my life, my 20 plus years of working in film and TV, where we're lucky enough to meet some people and work with some great people and all that kind of stuff, man. You know, I just tell the good stuff, Dan. I just tell the good stuff.
Oh. There's bad shit in every industry. I get to make beer for a living, but it's fucking hot, sweaty, hard, heavy work.
And you love that because you get to wear your little shorts and your vest.
Oh, yeah. I wish I could wear shorts. I'd be very happy if I could roll through the brewery in stubbies and not burn my legs on every goddamn pipe you walk past.
That's true. Everything's hot, isn't it? So it's a dangerous business. It's a dangerous business, Dan. Oh. But you know, at the end of the day, you're bringing so much joy to people by making beer. So you gotta think about that when you're almost burning yourself, and you know all the dangers. Very recently, just having gotten back to the brewery floor after, obviously we had brewers move on to other positions in the industry, and so I've come back down to the floor to do a lot more hands-on work, and rather than sort of running the brewery from my pedestal that I put myself on. The one thing I did not miss was always being damp in the brewery, whether it's fucking humidity and sweat and fucking like steam and water and beer and condensation coming off every single thing that's in there. That is the one thing that I didn't miss, because you just smell like a wet, damp sock at the end of the day. It's like 8 hours of built-up moisture, and then you finally dry off, and you can smell it all, and you just go, yeah, that's not cool, man. Oh, man. Cool. But do you go home smelling of nice beer? I mean, like, you know, sometimes breweries smell really nice when you get all the hops and the malt and all that kind of stuff, and it's like, oh, this is a really joyous aroma.
If you go home smelling like nice beer, you've done something drastically wrong, like had a tank pop on you or something that you haven't released the pressure, or trying to get a yeast slug out the bottom of a tank and you like load it up full of tons of pressure to try and get it to release this yeast slug, and you're not quick enough to close the handle or anything. It's 100% a rite of passage for every brewer coming through the industry to get covered head to toe in yeast from a tank at some stage in their early career.
Wow, there you go.
And that's when you smell nice, because that's full of like dry hops and everything like that. Doesn't smell so great once the sun hits it after a little while, but it's if you come home smelling nice, you've done something wrong.
That's amazing. That's like, you know, and also if you come home covered in hops as well, I can imagine, and your partner or wife or whatever would be like, hard day at work, dear? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it can be shockingly bad too. Like if you do like some of those tanks are under 1.5 bars of pressure, and it's just if you don't move on that handle quick enough, it'll just spray like a fire hose uncontrolled, and then you've got to clean it all up and just do the walk of shame through the brewery to the hose to hose yourself off from looking like you've just walked through a snowstorm of yeast.
That's amazing.
I remember Chris showing us a video of that happening.
A knowing look that brewers look at when they've done that. They kind of look at each other and go, just a nod. They're like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
We've all made that mistake once. Is I think what the nod is.
Some people don't learn, Pete. Some people don't learn.
Sorry about the bad timing there to get into the core topic there, Ben.
That's all right. That's all good.
Ben,
I do hope I'm not the core topic. That's a bit terrifying. If that is.
That was my goal. You've already got the overhead light on, mate. We just need you sweating.
Yeah.
You're going to have to stick around for a while after the podcast because I think your internet's being run by carrier pigeons because it'll look much better in the final recording, but I can see you. It looks like it's being filmed with a potato, and you're at 11% uploaded. So we're going to need to get you to 100% before you drop off.
Oh my god. Okay, no worries.
So we'll worry about that later. But you can keep grilling him. What question are you up to, Dan? 42.
We got completely sidetracked.
We were talking about beer, beer, lovely beer.
You can listen back to it, Pete, and
I will.
Go from there.
Don't you worry.
So these are all just like conversation starters, Ben. So don't freak out too much. But
this is what we do to all our guests. We grill the fuck out of them. These are all
things that I've thought of over the years that we've known each other that I've really wanted to have a conversation with you about, and we've never gotten to this stage. Like when we're headed out at times, I've gone like, right, when we're sitting down at a table tonight, this is one thing that I really want to talk to you about. So the first one I've got on here is like 1989 runs their VHS flea pit, like bad B movies. Is it every week or every second week or once a month?
So at the moment we've kind of like a lot of events we've sort of hit pause on, but it was twice a month. So it was every 2 weeks we're doing upstairs screenings. So we'll probably bring that back, maybe not next month, the month after. So hopefully twice a month.
I got to say, sorry, Dan, to interrupt you. I got to say, I'm really I'm really impressed that you've built a bar called Bar 1989 that is more than just we painted some shit on the walls and we've got some toys behind the counter. You've really lent into the theming of the bar. You've got the VHS flea pit. You've got the pop culture inspired trivia nights. You've got the comedy stuff. You've got the board games. You've got the coin ops. Like it's
World Championship arcade records.
Right. It's not just window dressing, and it's actually quite rare because there's plenty of themed bars in the country. And in fact, there's quite a few video game themed bars in the country. But when you go in, they might have a couple of pinball machines, but for the most part, it's just some toys, someone's toy collection behind the bar and a cool name. So I've got to say, I've always been really impressed with Bar 89 for that, for really embracing that. And I would encourage anyone who's listening who hasn't been in there. It's fucking dead smack bang in the middle of Newtown. It's easy to get to, and it's really quite an experience. It's the sort of place you can bring a girlfriend who doesn't necessarily like beer and bars, because there's always something interesting. It's very social. It's the Newtown vibe as well, man. It's perfect for it.
Yeah, thanks, man. Oh, thanks, dude. Like, I think with the bar, it's just been. I think the beauty of small bars. Like when I moved to Australia and learnt about the small bar scene, the thing that attracted me about small bars was the fact that if you open a small bar, you basically open the bar you want to go and drink in, right? So you can do pretty much whatever you want with that kind of concept, and that's why I like small bars maybe over like the bigger, more sort of polished bars, I guess you could say, because they've always got this particular sheen.
We don't have many of those in Australia, Ben. The polished bars.
We've got the
Aries,
as in like very very well sort of presented and all that kind of stuff. Bars, I feel like Sydney's. This is a big conversation. I'll try not to make it too boring, but yes, thanks, man. Like,
sorry, Dan.
Yeah, it's been over the years just like finding the right people and bringing the right ideas in, and we do a lot of stuff, and it is, man, it's so sad because obviously it gained a lot of traction before COVID, and like everywhere else, COVID's just sort of in terms of events has kind of put the kibosh on a lot of that kind of stuff. And we're hoping that this year we can bring all that back. We've kept things alive, like the trivia we did during lockdown, the last lockdown, and our 5th birthday, we had you guys on for live streams, and we've done a lot of stuff to keep those kind of events alive. And there's so many more things I want to do with the place as well. When I talk to more people and meet more people. Uh-oh. Dan's just running to the toilet. No, I'm sure he's doing
Probably hear
else.
a dog vomiting in the background or something.
But yeah, so I think that's the fun part is like, you know, starting as an arcade bar, growing that, getting the games in, making sure we had original games as well. So you come to the bar and you're playing something that was, you know, from the 80s, like playing an original 1981 Donkey Kong cabinet that has been shipped over from America.
But even the board games, they're all 80s. You know, they're all. I don't know if obviously you may not have bought them in the 80s, but they're 80s board games. Like Operation, I think I played last time I was there.
Oh yeah, I think that one's gone because the bits get
someone
lost.
Ate all the pieces. Yeah.
We had to replace board games.
Same as what happened at everyone's home, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, things get vomited on every now and again as well, which is never fun in a board game. Yeah, but it's just all about just like all the fun stuff I love. You know, I love films and I love games and I love like discovering barcade in America and just thinking what a great concept for a bar, and just seeing that concept evolve into so many other bars around the world and in Australia as well, in terms of like other arcade bars. I mean, other arcade bars that have the same sort of like sense as us in terms of just doing a lot of fun stuff around. There's one, like you say, it's one thing to open a bar and just go, here it is, here's the game, there you go, bar. But kind of really embrace the culture and like the experience that comes with that. And, you know, bars like Netherworld in Brisbane do that really well. You know, there's other bars. There's a bar in that's just opened up in Tasmania called Replay Bar, and they seem to be on it in terms of like, you know, this is a fun place to come and hang, and it's about the games and stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of like, you know, people doing it, but we've really embraced a lot of multi-facets of pop culture, and I think and I've always wanted to do a film. It's a
great balance too.
Yeah,
like it is. You've found the right balance. I think that's kind of the real message there. Is it's you've lent into it, but in a way that it keeps it new and fresh, and everything that you could possibly want in that theme is there.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's I'm glad everybody enjoys it because it's been a hard 5 years to keep that.
Oh, especially with COVID, man. I mean, 5 years and 2.5 of those 2 years of that has been COVID. Like,
and then I had 1 year where I basically had a hole in my ass for a year, and I nearly died because of the bar. That was fun times as well. You know,
I won't get you to relate that story on the podcast.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Perianal abscesses, don't get one. It's the fucking worst. Holy crap. Anyway.
Yeah, no.
Sorry.
All right, Dan, sorry, mate, because this will be another example where you have these questions to ask and you never get to ask them. My apologies.
No, you completely hijacked that on me.
My apologies.
Hello.
So the where I was going with the whole VHS flea pit question was, what makes a bad movie good?
Whoa, that's a good question, isn't it? It's very simple. It's very simple. Okay, the answer is really simple. If a bad film is entertaining, then it's a good bad film.
So it doesn't take itself too seriously. There's memorable lines.
Well, no, not even that. If you're watching it and having a good time, then it's a good bad film.
Yeah, but
right?
Yeah.
You know, like, let's be honest, okay? The Room is a bad film. It's got cult status because of the maker, but it's a fucking hard watch. You know what I mean? You can't Room. You're not seeing The Room.
I can't think.
You must.
I can't think of it. I went straight to the
with
Cube.
Tommy Wiseau, the one that Franco made the movie about, like the you know, he made the film called what was it called? It's based on the book written about it, but the Disaster Artist.
Disaster Artist. Yeah.
You could just as equally argue that like Donnie Darko is not a great movie. I mean, the continuity of time travel in that film is fucking horrendous, but it's so out there and
a bad movie.
Bad.
We could have that.
Okay, I'll tell you, the finest example of a good bad film within the last year is got to be King Kong versus Godzilla. To me, epitomizes a good bad film, because basically the film knows what it is. It takes itself on face value. It's King Kong versus Godzilla. They threw everything at it, and I reckon it was the best film that came out last year in 2021 when it came out. And it's great. I love it. It's a bad film. Like, it's ridiculous. It's dumb. It's stupid. It's just like, but it's just so entertaining that you can't help but have a good time. You know what I mean? You can't help but have a good time when you watch that film. You know, the most famous sort of good bad film, and they made a documentary called The Best Worst Film about it, was Troll 2, which was a movie that was made by an Italian film director.
I've actually seen that. I don't know why. It was just on really late one night.
Famous scene when the kid goes, "Oh my!" They're eating them, and then they're gonna eat me. Oh my god! And then there's like a slow pan into his face, and it's directed by an Italian filmmaker who could hardly speak English. Was never meant to be a sequel to The Troll. It was meant to be its own thing, but then obviously the distribution company re-released it as Troll 2 to kind of piggyback it on an existing property and all that kind of stuff. And it's awful. And there's a documentary called The Best Worst Movie, which is about the life of all the people involved in that film afterwards, and how people that film's got such a cult following and people love it. So yeah, I don't know if you can break it down into elements. I don't know if there is an alchemy around a good bad film. I think it boils down to the very simple thing that you can watch a bad film and still enjoy it. Taken, that's a bad film, right?
With Liam Neeson,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, don't think it's a bad film.
Oh, it's
I think it's better than Jack Reacher, which will play
the first one or the second one.
Yeah. Well, both, man. I mean, if anyone who's read the books that they based the film on will tell you that casting a guy who's 4 foot nothing and needs to stand on cardboard boxes to reach eye level with every female actress he's ever played against was not the 6.5 foot muscle man that they wrote the books around.
But that's why
he's
Tom
not
Cruise
Jack
was
Reacher.
cast. He was going, I have to reach things. I can be Jack Reacher. That's fine.
Well, we'll talk about it in Trailer Trash, but they've now done a series with Alan Ritchson, who is perfect for that.
He looks good.
He's a big mother...
Yeah. Okay, Taken I use as an example because Taken is a liked film, but it's not a good film. Like, there's that very famous scene where he jumped... There's basically... Taken is used as one of those movies where, it's a simple concept. It's enjoyable to watch, but it's not a good film. If you go on YouTube, there's a thing called whatever Liam Neeson's character is jumping over a fence, and basically it's a shot of him jumping over a fence, but it's cut it's got something like 27 edits in it, and all he is jumping over a fence. You know what I mean? It's like one of those. You can put it up there as in this isn't. Yeah. Anyway, maybe that wasn't the best example, but I think that's if you go out to make a good bad film, you're basically making something that's very entertaining that might have low production values and might have a lot of shit special effects in, bad actors, terrible music, awful editing. But if it's entertaining, then it's a good bad film. If there's something that entertains you about it, then that's what a good bad film is at the end of the day.
I'm totally including that Brian Mills jumps a fence clip while you're talking about
it in
the edit, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's 8 Michael Bay style shaky footage edits for him to jump 1 6-foot fence.
Exactly. Yeah. If Wes Anderson did that, it would just be done in one shot, really low, really wide angle, and it would be doing this.
Just be a dude jumping a fence.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there wouldn't be drama in it. I hear you.
This question came from the VHS flea pit. This entered my head, and I've been wanting to talk to you about this ever since we watched Turkish Star Wars at A9. Because that is a horrendous film, but I would 100% watch that again. Like, I had such a good time on it, and it's so dialogue heavy with the enormous amounts of subtitles at the bottom of the introduction.
In Turkish, no doubt.
No, the subtitles are in English.
Yeah.
But then halfway through, there's another enormous dialogue dump, and it takes like a left turn 3/4 of the way through the movie. It's intercut with the Death Star trench run at the start with horrendous special effects. Guys sitting in front of a screen that has Star Wars on it going, I'm going up and doing this, and I'm going down. And that is literally the film, Pete. That is literally the opening to the film. And guys jumping off trampolines to do flips and do training montage with fake paper mache boulders tied to their legs. It's horrendous. But yet it's absolutely entertaining.
Yeah.
It is.
There you go.
You just I laugh a minute and not meant to be that way, I wouldn't imagine. I imagine they filmed it to be a serious movie. I say that in quotation marks. 2
space cadets crash land on a desert planet where an evil wizard seeks the ultimate power to take over the world. Although the movie borrows some background footage from Star Wars, the plot is mostly unrelated. There's your IMDb blurb.
Da-da-da.
The movie is The Man Who Saved the World.
And it's Pete. The music in it is Star Wars movie intercut with Indiana Jones music, and that's how.
I'm surprised John Williamson didn't end up owning those guys.
Yeah,
Lucasfilm tried at some stage.
Yeah, well, I think that's the beauty of the Flip It though. It's like you go into that room with a shared experience with an audience. You know what I mean? Who love trash, and trash and highly entertaining trash that's why I love the Flip It. It's great, and that is built to. You know, you go in, you have a couple of drinks, you shout at the screen, you take the piss out of the film. That's totally the experience you want to have when you watch a Flip It, you know? So, yeah. So there you go. Good. What makes a bad film good? If it's entertaining, then it's a good bad film.
And I think that rolls into one of the other movies that I watched recently that you'd mentioned to me that I'd never watched was They Live. And I think that ticks all of those boxes as well. I mean, John Carpenter is one of the modern masters of the bad good movie, with so many of the ones that he's made. There's a few very questionable ones on there that are just bad movies.
Oh man, you could do a whole podcast on like poor John Carpenter and his career and all that kind of stuff, and where it was doing this and where it kind of did this and then it kind of did that. You know.
Well, we'll get to James Cameron later with Avatar 2 trailer.
Oh my god, yeah.
Because you just described his fucking career trajectory as well.
So the next one that I've always wanted to talk to you about is the use of visual storytelling and musical score in movies with limited dialogue. I've pre-written these things, so that's why it sounded very read off a page. My thoughts were obviously always Mad Max, Fury Road, Tron, and most recently Dune, where there must be limited pages of script, but like written script, but huge amounts of film footage filmed for these, and they seem to be they're large scale visual storytelling with limited dialogue dumps and limited. I guess Tron's a little bit different, and I guess Dune is a little bit as well. But there's limited protagonist that is the idiot that needs shit explained to him. It's all just done through happenings in the world. And just, I don't really know what my question is in that. It's more of what your opinion is on that visual storytelling with limited script kind of thing.
Right. Okay. Well, I think any
discuss. It's like a thesis topic.
Yeah, exactly. Any good filmmaker and any good storyteller, basically, storytelling is a visual medium, right? So if you're able to visually tell a story you need dialogue with certain things. Like, there's a lot of arguments with like when you read film theory and all that kind of stuff about like why do you need characters? Why do you need this? Because characters and plot and dialogue, everything pushes the story forward, right? Music is emotion, so that's what you're using your music for. You're using it to emote your audience. You make them happy, you make them sad, you make them enthralled. There's a very great clip on YouTube where somebody has stripped all the music off at the end of E.T. and they've just redone all of the sound effects. So when E.T.'s leaving,
would have just been flat
and exactly. There's no emotion. So the whole "I'll be right here" and all that kind of stuff. You've got that wonderful John Williams score. That's all gone, and it's just wind and people looking at each other awkwardly and like the dog running up the thing going clack, 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 and then running back down again. And there's nothing there. So, I mean, I think in terms of that...
Even Flight of the Navigator would be exactly the same. There was the score... Sorry, it's a really old 80s movie. Probably no one's seen it.
Love Flight of the Navigator.
I think everybody's seen Flight of the Navigator.
Everybody our age
perhaps of our age, yeah. But again, that would have been a score-heavy movie that wouldn't have made any sense because every scene of the ship was music backed. It was always a long sweeping scene with music behind it to kind of drive the emotional point of what they were showing you.
Yeah, this is it. And so I love that. I mean, I really loved the Blade Runner sequel. Obviously, the same director who did Dune. Like, there was a lot of moments in that with just music and visuals and vistas and all that kind of stuff.
When I wrote those, Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049 were in my head, and then I didn't use them as examples of it. But yes, 100%.
So, like, sort of I think.
But Tron and Tron Legacy were both the same. I mean,
I don't know. I think Tron and Tron Legacy's like got some really good visuals in it because it kind of sticks out as being well made in terms of the visuals. Like, I would argue that the film, I struggle to watch that film now. I loved it when it first came out, and I love the soundtrack, Daft Punk and all that kind of stuff. But it's actually really, it weighs itself down with this whole sort of legacy thing a little bit, that film, I think. And the action
aged poorly.
Yeah, and the action isn't that exciting. When you watch it again, it's all very ploddy and very methodical. And the soundtrack, I would argue, if Daft Punk hadn't done that soundtrack and they didn't have that soundtrack on that film, it would not have been, I don't think it was that successful, but it would not have been that interesting to watch. That movie would, visually it would have been okay, but the music really lifted the visuals, you know what I mean? It was really saved by that soundtrack, that movie. I mean, I'm
I'll have
trying
to go
to
back and watch it. It has been a while.
It's still great to look at, and Jeff Bridges is really cool. I actually like the lead actor in it. I keep forgetting his name here. He's really good. But I was trying to think of movies. So you got things like Wall-E. I'll tell you what, the best example of visual storytelling with music, where you don't need dialogue, is the first 10 minutes of Up. You seen Up?
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. When the relationship between
exactly,
the boy
like you turns into the wife, and you know that, and that's also a replicant test as well, because if you don't cry at the first 10 minutes of Up, then you're obviously you're not a human. You're not a human being. Yeah, exactly.
It's the first bit of the void conf test.
Yeah, if you're standing there like dry-eyed, then like you're obviously a replicant. Like, you're not a human because you have no emotions. So I think I think it's great. And
none of this turtle on its back in the desert. Shit.
No, exactly.
Just first 10 minutes of Up. Just fucking just upload that now.
Are you crying? Are you crying? Are you crying? Yeah, I think what's really interesting is, like, now when you watch films, modern films, and there's so many interesting things out there to watch. But we are inundated with big Hollywood blockbusters, even though the rise of the indie is still there with COVID and all that kind of stuff, and the fact that there's more things on streaming and TV is now taking more of that landscape. You could argue that The Mandalorian, a lot of that is actually visual storytelling over dialogue and everything. You got a lead character, you can't see his face, and you still get more emotion out of that character than you do, like, and a lot of other stuff.
Mind you talk about COVID in that context. Specifically them, Mando, have invented technology to work around COVID that will change movie storytelling forever.
Yeah.
Like the invention of the concept behind the volume and the fact that they executed the volume will be something that will be implemented, I think, as a standard moving forward for movies.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So there's been a lot of innovation that's come out of that kind of dealing with COVID.
Yeah. So I think I don't know whether we're answering your question, Dan, or just having a lovely conversation about visual storytelling. But
that was what the question was for.
It was about, yeah. So I would say that, if you're a filmmaker, then you've got to tell a story, and if you can tell a story just through visuals and music, that is your job, essentially. Dialogue, you can tell when there's this information dumped for information's sake, you know what I mean? Like bad dialogue where you're just learning something. If you can visualize it, great. That's why if you watch a film where it's just voiceover heavy or flashback heavy, you're like, oh man, tell a story.
Like every MCU, MCU movies are dialogue heavily, and they've usually got a young protagonist who needs to have everything explained to them so that you've got the journey for the audience told through that character. And it is kind of a cheap gag. And I think audiences, maybe it's just we're getting old and fucking cynical, but I think you see through it a lot better than you used to. Yeah. I think maybe we're fatigued with that these days. And it does lead well into your next question, Dan, because...
It does. This is why I put these two questions together.
And Ben, you just mentioned bad dialogue, but there's some great films that are heavy in dialogue where the dialogue is the movie. And I noticed that a lot of the examples that we've talked about, even the ones that Dan didn't write down that you brought up, so like Wall-E, in terms of visual storytelling, they tend to be post-apocalyptic. They tend to be in a vast, expansive universe where there's lots of vistas and there's a lot of emotive content wrapped up in the visual side of it, but you need a world or a universe or a setting for the story that suits that, or else it'd never work. You couldn't. I mean, you look at like on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. You look at something like Clerks. It's a great movie because it's dialogue heavy.
Yeah.
So they're divergent paths to tell a story. I think they both equally have their place, and then 90% falls in between.
The one I had in my mind, Clerks is a fantastic thought.
Example.
Fuck. Example. Yeah, that's the word I was trying to dig for. Example. The one I actually had in my head was, it wasn't hugely well received, but I really love it, is The Hateful Eight. Tarantino's The Hateful Eight. Like, so many people in, mostly, there's a few flashbacks that are outside of the cabin, but mostly set in the cabin. The major dialogue sequences happen within the cabin. And I just think those heavyweight actors all in the room together, there's a certain amount of visual storytelling going on with it as well, but dialogue heavy to tell a really impactful, small story.
Yeah, and it's like a play. Like the Hateful Eight feels like a play because it's like an ensemble piece.
Yeah, it does.
Where you've got like, all your actors together trying to out-act each other and all that kind of stuff, which I love when you watch those kind of like ensemble piece. But like,
and it was also, fucking brilliant.
Tarantino loves his dialogue, and he's very good at writing dialogue. And Kevin Smith also is great at writing dialogue, even though recently he's just too self-aware now to make it interesting. That's the problem with Kevin Smith right now.
I agree.
I still love Kevin Smith. I'm a massive fan. He's doing so much cool stuff, and I'm put my...
but he's doing cool stuff outside of the Hollywood arena.
Yeah.
The stuff that he's doing inside the Hollywood arena kind of feels a bit used and old-fashioned and...
Well, he kind of says he makes his stuff up for himself, you know what I mean? And you can totally get that. Like the most recent Jay and Silent Bob movie, when it was just, him. He put himself in that film as a director of film about the film, and that's when it kind of lost me.
It's
I was
very
like,
meta.
Oh, come on, like seriously.
But he made his name on the back of new IP, not the fifth sequel 10 years later. And I get he's probably going through. I mean, it's his midlife crisis, right? He's revisiting his own roots, like you tend to do when you have a midlife crisis, and he's a bit old for that. But I feel like that's what he's doing. And yeah, he's at a point now where he's recognized well enough as knowing what he's doing that he can pull it off if he asks to, and he's rich enough that he can self-fund it if he needs to. And so you get the Jay and Silent Bob return, you get Clerks 3, you get the fucking rehash of all the stuff. But what made Kevin Smith in Hollywood was, I'm going to hit you with Clerks, then I'm going to hit you with Mallrats, Chasing Amy, all of those are Dogma. All of those were original movies that were, some of them were linked into the same universe, but they were original IPs that were standalone fucking knockouts. And none of them had his daughter in it, because everything he puts her in is a fucking tragic wreck of a movie. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's
what was the one about Frankfurts and Nazis?
Oh, man.
Remember the name of the movie?
Egg Hostess is an
that's not even, it's not even bad enough to qualify for bad, good movie.
Yeah, it's a shame that he didn't, so he made a film called Red State, which I think is probably the best. I liked it. Yeah, that's like the best non-Kevin Smith film he's ever done. And it was basically him trying to be a proper director, and he said this in interviews. It's like, I wanted to write a story that changed every 20 minutes, and I wanted to try and direct it and it's a really good film. It's a really good film. It's a really good time. It's a shame that we don't get that Kevin Smith, because he can write dialogue, he can make films. It's almost like he likes playing with his toys. That's what he does. He plays with his toys in his universe and all that kind of stuff, and that's fine. Anyway, I'm babbling on. What was the next question? If I totally missed what the next question was,
that was my bad again.
It was dialogue heavy movies and the different presentations.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Look, everything goes hand in hand. You've got to find the right balance, right? And if you're going to make a film, then you decide which direction you want to go with, right? And I think that's it. You've got great dialogue heavy films, but dialogue has to be driven by characters. And if you've got good characters, then you've got good dialogue. That's what it comes down to. You know what I mean? So you take something like Heat, Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, Val Kilmer.
Great movie,
great actors, great dialogue, great story. It all goes together. So I guess what we've been talking about is like the different facets of filmmaking and how they all fit together to make a film. But then it's all down to what the stories you're telling and what it is you want to say with the film as well. You're not going to Sorry
to cut you off. I just think, to me, what you're saying is precisely correct, but those kinds of movies to me always feel like they've been written as a novel first, and a lot of them haven't, right? But they're fleshed out. They're not just handing pages of dialogue to actors to read. The character has been fleshed out, and the actor has to take the cues from the director or whoever wrote it, the screenrunner, the showrunner, to say, this is who you are. So when you read this dialogue, you have to filter it through this entire person of personality to be able to portray that character effectively. And so the dialogue-heavy movies that work and the dialogue-heavy TV series that work for me are ones that they've spent just as much time figuring out who the character is and what motivates them on a personal level, even if they're not directly dealing with that in the show, and then handing them dialogue. You can't just write cerebral dialogue and hand it to characters you don't connect with.
Yeah, no, it's true.
So
it's true. Yeah, and
unless it's a comedy.
Yeah, this is it.
I mean, Clerks. To contradict myself, you had characters walk into the Quickie Mart in Clerks that you never see again, and they have a whole conversation about the black slave labor on the Death Star not being representative of the characters that were actually the movie was about. And then you never see that character again. So that's just pure, it's cerebral dialogue without character development.
I think you watched the different Clerks movie to me. I'm not sure the black slave labor on the Death Star ever came into conversation.
Was it not black slave labor? It was definitely slave labor.
It was about slave tradies.
They were independent contractors. They were independent contractors. Sorry,
got killed by the rebels, and they were innocent because they were just building the Death Star for the
My
Empire.
apologies. You're right, Dan. I'm tying up a couple of other movies into that. I've just watched Django Unchained again.
I think it's interesting though because it's about balance, right? Like you can make an action. Some of the best action films have got the very simple sort of A to B sort of mentality, right? Or a simple plot but a great story. So take Die Hard as like an example of like an amazing action film where you've got like a very simple premise. People are stuck in a building, being taken over by terrorists, and you've got one rogue cop who is basically there to save the day, but kind of is sort of like the anti-hero, but he's a hero. But you layer that with he's there to see his wife. They're going through a bad time. He's not really happy to be there. Blah blah blah. Oh, okay. My wife is going to bed.
You give them the 5-minute warning.
But then you marry him with like a really charismatic villain who's obviously got more going on than what you can see, but it's still very sort of baseline stuff, It's interesting.
And then every terrorist other than the main character was just a pop out 80s terrorist. Like it was so cartoon-esque.
Yeah, but simple,
those German
great,
fucking Third Reich dudes.
I keep saying like if they'd only done Rogue One as Die Hard on the Death Star, then that would have been incredible. But yeah,
I think Rogue One was a great film, by the way. So before you diss it too hard,
really.
I love Rogue One.
So Ben won't be coming back to the podcast.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, there you go. But yeah, no, it's an interesting conversation to have because like you could digest and break down a lot of movies and to see what makes them work. And I think it always comes down to again. It's about a good story, good characters, and then the execution, which is what we're talking about, whether it's dialogue heavy, whether it's about music or visuals, depends on what story you're trying to tell,
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're probably going to take a break in a couple of minutes, hopefully in time for you to say goodnight to your missus properly. Did you want to ask your last couple of questions, Dan?
No. Can we say that for after the break? 'Cause I'm dying for a pee.
Yeah, we can.
Hey, hey.
We just finished talking about dramatic.
Well, I have 2 dramatic final questions to ask.
Oh my gosh.
And we're back.
I had 5 to go. No, these have been awesome, Ben. I don't know what you're worried about.
I'm no expert, man. I'm no expert. I'm just a guy who did some things.
You're far more of an expert than either of us.
Yeah, that's so true. But Dan, before we get into that, we really need to talk about our second beer. So, because we're drinking our third.
So I had Groovy Rhythm Hazy IPA from. It's not going to focus because my head's behind it. From White Bay, it's not going to focus. 6.7% Hazy IPA. I think their text for their alcohol AVB on their can is a little too small and illegal, but that's one way. That's their decision. It was nice, but it was really quite green bitter. Like it was quite hop bitter. That's why when I first started drinking it like an hour ago, I actually checked the pack date on it to see whether it was like packed this week or something and whether I should have left it another week or so. But it was actually packed in November, 4th of November. So it was super hoppy and like tasted really fresh. So their packaging quality is well up there. There was no oxidization to it whatsoever, but it was really green bitter. Like, it was really quite a harsh dry hop bitterness. They've chucked a lot of dry hop in there, and it's never mellowed out. So it was still nice, and I would drink it again. But I would really like to see that just mellow out just a touch.
Those guys are based in Balmain, aren't they? White Bay?
Yeah, somewhere over that way.
Yeah. My brother-in-law lives out there, and he treated us to a load of their beers on Christmas. They're pretty good, man. They do some good stuff.
Yeah, a lot of them are really good. And don't get me wrong, that was a really nice beer. It just was too green bitter. Like, if it had like much more kettle hop addition, if they wanted to get to that bitterness, but it was green. It was hard. It was a harsh, dry bitterness.
But how many pixels out of pints do you give it?
Yeah, you're right there with me, Ben.
It was still definitely a 3.5 beer. It was a good beer.
So that sounds like a 3.25 out of 5. Cool. And Ben, you've just cracked your second. So
so I've just got the Atomic Brewing, who are the guys down in Redfern. It's good. It's a good hazy. I'm trying to work out if I think it's just a hazy pale. I don't think it's a hazy IPA. It's not bad. It's good fun. I would give it a 3. Not overly excited about it, but it is hitting the spot. But
there's a bit too many hazies out there, in my opinion, these days.
Well, hazies is the latest
craze.
It's hazy, but a good hazy is a good beer.
There's
what I mean?
5,000 years of history. Well, no, there's 3,000, 4,000 years of history in beer, and suddenly we're only drinking one style.
The haze craze. Get on the haze train. It's good.
Play to your market, Peter. Play to your market.
Yeah. So I get that it's about making money. I get it. I do. I just finished, and I've still got a sip left just in case I need a reminder. This is a really interesting beer. So this is Slow Lane Brewing's Liquid Bread.
Oh, that's good.
Which is a Doppelbock beer.
A Doppelbock. Wow, that's an unusual style.
I love it. Doppelbocks are a strong, rich, and malty lager originally brewed by Bavarian monks in the 17th century. I love this. Designed to sustain the monks while they abstain from solid foods during the 40-day Lent period, Doppelbocks earned the nickname Liquid Bread. Disclaimer, we do not condone 40-day beer-only diets. Malt is Dark Munich, Caramel Munich, Carafa Special. Hops, Hallertaufer, sorry for the Germans out there. Hallertau? Yeah, okay. Hallertau
Mittelfrüh.
And the yeast is German lager. I've got to say, it's a really interesting contrast to a traditional dark beer, like all the dark beers that we've been trying recently, the stouts, because it's got the stout notes that you'd expect out of a malt-forward beer. But it is a lager, so it's got a much lighter mouthfeel. There's a lot less coffee in it. It's more caramel. It's got a real bitterness to it, which, again, you'd expect out of a lager style. So it's an excellent contrast against our traditional dark beers on the podcast.
That you just described a Doppelbock there. 100%. Everything you said about all that is absolutely bang on. So we used to have Max. Max is now over at Filter Brewing, and he's a Bavarian, and we use Mittelfrau for a few beers in the past, and he used to fucking hate the way we'd pronounce it. all those German noble hops, we with just our Australian accent.
I guess being Bavarian, he could he say, where did Hitler come from? Was it Bavaria?
He's sure Bavarian,
it was Bavaria, so he could click his heels and say, this wouldn't have happened if it's Sons of War.
Yeah.
I never remember which movie that came from.
But anyway.
Thanks for the timely reminder, Dan.
So, yeah, Max used to hate it, and he used to always correct us when we would butcher all these German names, because we'd read them phonetically.
Yes.
You would just read it phonetically.
Because we're skips.
And we would just fucking butcher them, and he'd constantly correct us.
I tell you
one way. Max is awesome. I fucking love him.
Slow Lane Brewing's great, though. We've got that Doppelbock at the bar, and we also sell their hazy pale ale as well. Those guys are doing some really good stuff. I love the fact they've gone European style for all their beers as well. Obviously, coming from the U of K, There's a lot of styles they brew, and the types of beers that I kind of, I don't want to say grew up with, but yeah, since I was 18, started drinking. Yeah, they're really great, and they've only been around for like a year, I think.
It's a good
quite new, botany-based brewing.
A year and a half too.
Yeah, I really like what they're doing. They're doing some good stuff, and their brewery's really nice as well. I popped over there a couple of months ago, and it's a nice, simple, small setup. But yeah, good beers, which is what a brewery should be about, right? It's good, solid beers.
Yeah, fuck yeah. So. And not playing, and this goes back to what you just said, Dan, not playing to the popular vote. It's about making a beer that's interesting and exciting and different and letting it stand on its own 2 feet rather than just getting caught up in the hype wave. And I'm in IT, so it's all about the hype wave, right? I get a bit sick of it. I'm going to give that a 4. Yeah, fucking the latest acronym. It's called Marketecture. Is one of my favorite words.
God.
Marketecture, because I'm an architect and I'm used to designing systems based on requirements, and then you get some fuckwit sales guy who goes, yeah, we could do this, it could do that, and it could do. Hey, Pete, can you just make it happen? That's marketecture. It's just it's based entirely on bullshit.
Pineapple pen.
yeah, exactly. So I'm going to give that a 4.5 out of 5 because that was a knockout fucking beer.
Good shout. Have you ever given a beer a 5? What's been your 5?
Yeah, recently, actually. Yeah. Dan kind of jizzed all over his beers last episode. It was like...
Yeah, they were good beers, man.
He's defending his fucking scores.
The Bacchus Peanut Brittle Goza. I bought 2 more of those today.
Peanut Goza. Ooh.
Peanut Brittle Goza.
Brittle Goza. So like what, very caramelly and peanutty and sort of
caramelly
sweet?
And chocolatey and peanutty and salty and all of the right things to tickle you all in the right places.
I'll tell you what I smashed 2 of today before the podcast, and I don't usually drink before the podcast.
Oh, bullshit.
I'm a bit of a lightweight.
Slurry when you get here most of the time anyway.
I've turned into a Chris. I haven't had it for a while, actually. It was Reckless Brewing's Double Cherry Sour.
Oh, it's yum.
We tried that on the podcast. I then went and bought bought out Beer Cartel. I think they had 18 cans, and I'm taking all of those motherfuckers. And they had 4 more at Cuddy Cellars, and I'm just like, yep, I'll have those too, thank you. So I'm halfway through my stack. Those are a brilliant fucking beer.
Yeah,
that's my daily drinker. At 6% for a sour, man, it's so good.
Reckless are really great. Reckless, sorry, quick plug. We've got our coin hop event that we do at the bar every month, which is where we get a craft beer brewer in, and we match them with a video game. So we have a beer tasting event. We do 3 on tap and a couple of packaged beers from the brewery. Normally the brewer or a rep or somebody be there to answer questions. There's a Q&A section with a beer tasting, and then afterwards we do like a video game masterclass. One we did last month was with Garage Project, or we did in December. Garage Project and Metal Slug 2 was the game, where Martin's our resident Metal Slug expert and the world record holder. He got the world record at the bar. So that's event. It's called Coin Hop. We're doing one with Reckless this month.
Awesome.
Reckless Brewing, who do obviously the cherry, and we're going to do, so they're coming in with some of their beers, and the brewer will be, I've forgotten her name, terrible, sorry if they're listening to this, don't hate me, please still come and do the event, that'd be really nice, thank you. And we're doing Mario Brothers the arcade, so Martin's going to teach people to play that, and then there's a competition on the arcade, and if you win beer merchandise and all sorts of stuff, so yeah. You guys should come to that because it's going to be fun. I was going
to say, man, I really need to move to closer to Newtown and Marrickville.
Yeah.
Jesus, you moved close once already. You don't need to move closer again.
The other side of the pond, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, do you want to ask your final questions, Dan? Because I really want to talk about this beer soon too, so don't let us forget.
Okay. We'll try and run through these last 2 questions. So, Ben, this one came up for my love of these sequences, but also you mentioned it in a phone call that we had a couple of weeks ago for a secret side project that we're running on. Single take, long take sequences, and how they're filmed and how it affects the actor's performance, but also the whole mood that it generates. And one of the big ones that comes into mind was the whole episode of Haunting of Hill House, the funeral episode.
Yep.
Where it's done in, I think, there's like 2 or 3 cuts in an hour-long episode, and it's just fantastically filmed and very well structured and laid out to give actors breathing room to move along, but also to change the set scene behind them, and what your thoughts are on like long take sequences.
Oh, okay. What are my thoughts? I like them. They're nice.
Okay, next question. Last question.
The hallway episode in Daredevil is a great example of a single
absolutely.
long take sequence that was fucking mind-blowingly good.
Yeah, I feel like that was a nice homage to Old Boy as well, which had that wonderful sort of like sideways scrolling hall fight, and I feel like that was Daredevil's way of kind of like doing a little nod to that sequence. I think again, it all comes down to what you're using it for, right? Because sometimes there's some sequences in like films and TV where you forget that they're one long sequence, and that's because you're so drawn into what the scene is about. And I think the magical thing about the Haunting in the Hill House, which if listeners have not watched is on Netflix, and you should totally watch it because it's one of the best haunted house shows I think there's ever been made, and it's directed by a guy called Mike Flanagan, and he's a really good horror director. He's just recently got a show on Netflix called Midnight Mass, which is incredible, which you should really watch because it really ties in these wonderful themes of horror and religion, and it takes a core concept of putting these two things together, and it does it really well. But
also very small story as well. Very character-focused stories.
Yeah, which is really great. He loves working with actors and letting actors act, which is wonderful. Which is where the long take stuff comes in. But Midnight Mass, watch it on Netflix. It's freaking great. But I think again, it's all about why you're doing it, right? It's all about why you can't just if you're just doing a long take just to be clever, then it's going to come across wanky, right? So if you're going to do one long take, then it's got to serve the story. Everything when you make something should serve the story. That's what it comes down to. Everything you watch, when you watch a film, when you watch TV, when you watch anything that's being presented to you, being directed, being created, should serve the story. The story is key. So the wonderful thing about that episode of The Haunting a Hill House is the way they used it, the long take, because Haunting a Hill House has two casts. It has same set of characters, but in two different points of their life. You've got them when they're kids, and you've got them when they're grown up. And it's a family drama built around the fact that this family grew up or lived in a house that was haunted, and then years later they all come back together for various reasons. And this one episode is about them at a funeral. I can't remember what character it is that they're at the funeral of. It would be a spoiler anyway. And the camera sort of does this great rotational thing where it's sort of following the characters, all shot on a steady cam. And then they'll go behind a wall, or they'll transition to another scene, and not transition to another scene, or they'll just use some sort of way of moving the camera to reveal the same characters, but the younger versions of themselves. Because there's kid versions of the grown-ups, and they'll use that as a technique to tell the story, because it's a very emotional episode about them recounting things about when they were kids. So that's a really smart way of using the long take, because it, it draws you into the scene. It doesn't, you do look at it as a technical marvel and go, oh my God, how do they do that? But the storytelling element of it works because they're bringing the kids in at a point where, they're talking about some very heavy themes and the past and all that kind of stuff. So it's a smart choice. I'm trying to think of other things where they've used long takes and they've done it really well. So yeah, the Daredevil scene's really good. You've got one?
Yeah, so the car ambush in Children of Men.
Oh, yes.
So that was a long take. That's almost 3 minutes, that sequence. And it was specifically designed to augment the storytelling kind of method by increasing the anxiety of a sequence that was otherwise anxiety-inducing anyway. And I think it was brilliantly executed.
It's
there's
exciting.
Another one that...
Because it's an action scene as well,
Sorry.
And that's the great thing about that, because it's an action scene. There's a lot of there's a lot of drama connected to that scene and the point of the film and what's happening. And to do an action scene as one take as well is pretty ballsy, because there's so many things that can go wrong.
Well, I mean, look, they built a whole series around the concept of 24, where they're telling you a day in the life of and it's all captured in real time. And 24 was stolen as a concept from Nick of Time, which was a 2 and a half hour movie that was within the first 15 minutes of the movie, a timer on a bomb was set, and the rest of the movie is shot in real sequence for the remaining 2 hours on that bomb timer. So Yeah, it does add to the anxiety of an action sequence like that. This is a single take sequence. It's not the same as 24 A Nick of Time, but it certainly does. An action sequence shot like that does give you a sense of how fast shit's happening in real time in a way that a broken sequence can't, in my opinion.
It's interesting how it was so weird because The Last of Us 2, the video game The Last of Us 2, there's a few sequences in that are like a similar sort of thing. There's a sequence when you're playing, is it Abby? You're playing Abby and you're in the back of a car which is ambushed, and you're playing that sequence when it's one long sequence and you're on the back of the car with her and the ambush is happening and you're driving through and you're trying to escape things. That kind of reminded me of the idea of a single take. I know it's a video game, so it's a bit different, but it was.
I think that counts. It's a storytelling element. I'm getting a bit pissy now. It's a storytelling element, and as long as it's there for a reason, I think it still works in a video game as much as a movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And the wonderful thing about that use was because you were stuck in that moment and you felt the danger of it, because at no point did you get thrown out the car or whatever. Like the whole, is Dan still with us?
Yeah.
I think my internet might be dropping out a little bit. So
yeah, no, you're definitely using Wi-Fi on a Pringles can for the neighbor's Wi-Fi. I think that's,
sorry guys,
that's the problem.
So sorry,
you're stealing Wi-Fi.
I'm stealing Wi-Fi. The single take thing's great if it's utilized really well. I'm sure there's loads. I'm sure there's a gazillion examples that we could talk about.
There was one the opening sequence from Gravity.
There was sequence from Serenity.
Yeah,
I've not seen Serenity. It's so bad.
The opening sequence from Panic Room, which was actually CGI, but it did give you a very good overview of the floor plan of the apartment building that the movie was going to be set in, without having to walk you through it explicitly. There was and that was a 17-minute take in the Gravity movie, by the way. 17 minutes in a single take is a massive undertaking. There was one that I wish that I could remember. I'm trying to Google it in the background. I just can't find it. But there was a montage of, it was a drama movie. And it's not a movie I've actually seen. I've just seen a documentary on making that shot where I think a woman was dealing with the grief of a breakup or potentially a death of a boyfriend or a husband. And it's shot in her living room. And the camera, again, a Steadicam, is basically slowly rotating around her in her living space. And each time it swings around, her living space is changing because time is passing so quickly. So it's a new take on a traditional montage concept of making time pass quickly in a movie. But it covers like 2 or 3 years in a single 3-minute shot. And then you go and watch the documentary, and you had you had 50, well, not 50, you had 20 people pulling fucking assets out of this room just after the camera spins past in perfect concert to put the vase down, or, okay, now the vase is broken, so sprinkle the pieces. Now go and collect the pieces and put a different vase up. It was such a beautiful, elegant dance of, extras building this sequence, and all the cameraman had to do was swing a fucking Steadicam around this chick.
Yeah, everybody else had to do the hard work.
I wish I could remember the film.
I love that when you discover that something's been done sort of very sort of handmade, you know what I mean? It's a bit like
so much more meaning when you know the background behind stuff. It was even on the radio today that we're talking about the best worst wedding songs, and someone had Tears in Heaven. It's like, do you know why Eric Clapton wrote that song? Because that song has a totally different meaning if you actually understand what it's for. Same with Help from John Farnham. So same goes with movies. I love understanding what underpins some of the shit that we're watching, and you take for granted until you understand what the story is.
Yeah.
Adds so much more weight.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of other good examples. I mean, Goodfellas was always famous for years and years and years for having that really long take when it went around the club and it followed them and all that kind of stuff. Because back in the day, then you'd only have a limited amount of media, film that you could film. So there was a lot more sort of like smoke and mirrors that went into doing that compared to...
Oh, yeah, and it cost a fortune, right? A lot of their budget was spent on that original celluloid film.
Yeah.
I mean, Star Wars famously ran over... I think it was actually Empire Strikes Back ran over budget because they ran out of film and they had to buy more celluloid.
Yeah.
So there is one movie that got released on Netflix. I just had to try and find it, but I can't remember the name of it. And it has 4 one-take sequences in the movie. And it's a detective noir story, and it's filmed on celluloid, and they film all the way up until the film roll runs out, and then that's the cut, and they move to the next roll, and then they do, I'm pretty sure they do it 4 times within the movie, because they get about 25 minutes per roll or something like that. And it starts on a hill. I've spoken about this before, Pete, so just shut me up if you want me to. It starts with a girl on a hill in LA somewhere, and you don't really know why she's up there. It starts filming on her. I think she was jogging, or she drives up there in a car or something. And then a couple of shady guys come around and start talking to her, see if she's all right, and they sort of drift off camera, and then it stays focused on her, and she makes a phone call to a guy that's in a house down like a couple of kilometers away, and the camera pans over to the house and zooms all the way in on the house down a couple of kilometers away. He walks out on the balcony with the phone in his hand, is talking on the phone to her in real time, stays on the house while he walks down the stairs, gets in the car and takes off in the car. He drives in real time to that hill while the camera comes back to her. In the meantime, while he gets up there, she gets accosted by these 2 guys that were on camera beforehand and murdered down off the edge of the hill. His car pulls up, and a few things more happen at the end of that first roll of film, and it's amazing to watch that happen, and the cinematography that goes along with this, and the fucking timing that goes along with getting the guy to walk out on the balcony. Because I mean, if he's 2 seconds too late, like that's the end of the film rolls out before he gets up there and for the final shot of the sequence. And
and if the actor stuffs something up and they have to start again. But that's a really good example of like how that technique works for the storytelling, right? Because if she's getting murdered after getting off the phone with him, it's more impactful having followed that entire sequence happen in real time. Because that's the scary, because with editing, editing is all about cheating time. You can do so many things in editing to like compress time, extend time, all that kind of stuff. But if you've got something that's running in real time and you have a piece of drama that reflects how more terrifying that sequence of events is by seeing it play out real time, it's a good use of execution.
You want to talk about terrifying, the sequence in The Shining of following Danny on the little pedal bike through the hotel was such a good way to establish the eeriness of the movie itself, and also give you the layout of the hotel they're going to play the rest of the movie in.
How isolated
it was. That's
not
a single shot, though.
Sorry, mate?
Good, steady
That's not
time.
a single shot. It's long. It's a long shot, though, but it's not.
It's a single sequence, apparently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's again, what's that doing? That's telling us how isolated he is. Yeah, how alone and isolated they are through that technique. Welcome to film classes with film theory with Pixels and Pints. I'm sure the theory will get more wanky the more drunk we get.
Okay, well, I've got one easy one, because this is where me and Pete differ and disagree on this, Ben. So you have to play judge, jury, and executioner.
Oh no!
Oh no!
This is a little bit of a hot button topic at the moment. This is Denis Villeneuve's little wedge that he's driven in between the Pixels and Pints team here. So how important is cinema in the current world of COVID and home high-tech cinemas?
So what do you mean in terms of like experiencing
question.
Movies at home or going to the theatre?
Denis Villeneuve said Dune was a movie that you had to experience in the theatre. And Pete disagrees because his home theatre is better than what a cinema is going to provide these days, and he doesn't have to listen to
I never said that.
The mum crunching on popcorn and texting and answering the phone and smacking a kid across the head, and all the preppy boys taking photos of themselves in the back row and their muscles, and
the guy at the front getting a BJ while he's especially watching the movie. Yeah. I never said any of that, but carry on with the answer, Ben.
It's an interesting.
I'm paraphrasing here, but it was something along those lines.
There's some liberty taken there.
It's an interesting thing because especially now with the big cinematic event that's been Spider-Man, No Way Home.
Still haven't seen it.
Have you? Oh man, do yourself a favor, go and see it. It's so good. Because it was Tenet, wasn't it? That was meant to save cinema when COVID hit and all that kind of stuff.
I still haven't seen that.
That's all right. Don't have to. So it's all right. It's okay. So it's a weird one because so going to the cinema can be a shared experience watching a movie. So it's something like VHS Flea Pit, right? Where we watch some trashy, low-budget genre film. And part of the joy of doing that is the shared experience you have in the room with everybody else, yeah? Enjoying the trash. You laugh at the same bits, you shout at the same things, you know, the experience is being in the room with the other people.
It's tribal.
Yeah, exactly. It's... Whereas, you know, when you go and see a big movie, and so when you go and see a film in the cinema, yes, you can have all those really negative experiences with the audience, you know, people on their phone, people eating popcorn, crying, babies crying, and all that kind of stuff, which makes you feel like, oh, well, if I can watch this at home on my big TV or my home cinema theatre, then I'm going to have a more enjoyable experience because I'm not going to have that bother me. So there's that aspect. There's that aspect of it.
It's an interesting framing because we've discussed exactly the same framing to answering that question on the podcast before, and it's interesting to get your take on it as well. So don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying you're rehashing anything. I'm just saying that that's not actually what Villeneuve was talking about when he said what he said.
No, and because I haven't finished. Sorry, Pete.
Carry on. It's just interesting.
Put yourself back on mute, buddy. Put yourself back on mute.
So that's the aspect of going to the theatre, right? Like you've got those things that can irritate you about going to the theatre. You've got the good thing, shared experience. You've got the other thing about noise and other people ruining the experience for you. That's the experience going to the theatre. Then it comes down to what kind of movie you're watching at the theatre, yeah? So you might not want to go and see, like, a Kevin Smith movie that's going to be, you know, two people talking in a public toilet or whatever for, like, 2.5 hours. You might not need to experience that on the big screen because it's not necessarily cinematic, you know? You haven't got large vistas, big action sequences, great big things that'll be amazing to see on the big screen. You know, like something like Spider-Man, Dune, you know, the big kind of like blockbuster movies that are visual spectacles that would actually lose something by watching on your home cinema or your massive TV at home, because you're not going to be as immersed. You're not going to have that incredible experience that you are by watching these incredible, huge films that were designed to be screened on big screens and be cinematic experiences to be in the theatre with other people. So there's those two things, right? There's those two things, depending what film you're watching and also what kind of experience you want to have. So with all that kind of thrown into the conversation, Spider-Man No Way Home is an interesting one because it is everything you want from a blockbuster film that you have to see at the cinema. And why do you have to see it at the cinema? Because it is a collective experience. There's elements in that movie that are best experienced with a shared audience. There's certain things that happen. There's certain spoilers, you know, people that turn up and all that kind of stuff that will only be best experienced when you're in a room with however many other people, 100 people, because you're all sharing that experience.
That ship's probably sailed now. So most of the people, I think, if we went to go... I still haven't seen it. I know Dan has. But if I went to see it today, I would suspect about 60 to 70% of the people in the cinema are watching it for the second or third time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
If it's even still at the cinema, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely still at the cinema. I think Ghostbusters is now, you can buy that on Blu-ray now. That's finished its cinema run, but Spider-Man...
Well, Matrix Resurrections is already out for digital download,
yeah, it's
right?
It's shit. Nobody went and saw it. It sucks.
Let's talk about that later.
Oh. Yeah. So then obviously, you know, the spectacle of the film. It's a big film. There's a lot of great stuff that happens in that movie, which is best experienced on the big screen. So
why?
I would say somebody like Denis Villeneuve is obviously making big films that he wants to be on the big screen, you know, so that's why he'll always argue.
I want to unpack that, though. I want to unpack that, Ben. So I agree about the tribal nature of, and I've been using that word a lot lately, because we are tribal creatures, right? You want to... A shared emotional experience is always sharper than the individual emotional experience, unless it's loneliness, obviously. But that's not what Villeneuve was talking about. He was talking about technology. And when you've got cinemas who are, very few of them in Australia so far have spent the bazillion dollars it costs to put in a Samsung cinema screen, and the latest technology, which is Onyx, in cinema, screen technology, is a fucking OLED screen. It's just a real... Sorry, it's not OLED, it's LCD. It's quantum dot OLED... quantum dot LCD technology, which is the shit that's in your home TV and has been for 10 years. So what about the spectacle? Is it sheer size? Because I reckon if you sat 3 inches away from your 75-inch TV, the size difference is going to be roughly the same. So what is it about the home cinema versus real cinema experience from a technology perspective that's actually that much better at the cinema?
Interesting. Yeah.
If you're not a guy who, and I don't want Dan to make this about me, because he has a tendency to be a dick like that. Because he knows I've spent a lot of money on audio more than TV. My TV is like 7 years old, right? My audio is top of the line Klipsch, Atmos. There's 14 speakers in my living room, and my neighbor asks me to turn it down if I turn it up to like 30% of what it's capable of. So I've spent money on audio more than I have on visual. But if you go and talk to Ben Darkin, for example, he's got a projector. It's a 4K laser projector onto a glass bead screen. That guy's getting the fucking cinema experience at home as far as I'm concerned. And the technology's probably better than anything other than maybe the Sensstadium top-of-the-line cinema. And you don't get to pick.
I want to interject one thing here.
Sure.
Is I think he was talking more about, I don't think he was just specifically talking about technology when he was talking about it needs to be watched on the big screen. Take COVID out of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
The excitement that, how excited I was to see Dune. And how
so it's not about the shared experience of the people in the room as much, like a Star Wars movie is about the shared experience of the 100 people.
Chill the fuck out.
Okay.
You know how excited I was to see Dune.
Yep.
I spoke about it many, many times in the lead up. I avoided anybody's reviews on the film. I didn't want to know what their...
Yep.
Well, there couldn't have been spoilers for me, but I didn't want to know what their opinion on the film was. So I avoided all that leading in, even though we got it 2 months afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
COVID out of the equation, the experience of... I guess we don't do it too much these days, but getting dressed in decent clothes to go out to have an experience outside of your home, which is a shared experience and a shared awe, sitting in a large cinema with a group of people on their best behavior and enjoying a large scale spectacle together. It's okay. Let me try and rephrase it another way as well. I would be just as excited to go out and watch Dune on the big screen in a cinema with a shared collective rather than watching Dune at home, even if I had the best technology. The same as I would be going out to watch Cirque du Soleil on the stage rather than
watching the DVD later.
Or having a few people Cirque du Soleil in my lounge room.
Okay, so I think the Cirque du Soleil thing, because I think that talks to a different kind of spectacle. So where I was going was, I think there's two layers to the shared experience of the cinema experience. There's the Star Wars experience where the fucking theme music hits and the 100 people in the cinema are fucking standing up and clapping, right? There is a power behind that you get in every 1,000 movies that you go and see or that you watch at home, right? It's not many movies that get that collective experience from a true sense of the word. I think the experience you're talking about is more the social experience where, yes, I'm really excited to go and see it, but I'm more excited to go and see it with Dan and Chris because we're going to fucking have some beers afterwards and discuss the movie and we're going to watch each other's facial expressions change when shit happens in the film. that's a social experience as opposed to a collective experience. And that, you're right, you wouldn't come to my house and have some beers and pizza and watch a movie for the first time and have that kind of social experience.
Wasn't Villeneuve talking about one of those 1 in 1,000 movies then?
No, he was,
because I think he was.
Well, my interpretation of what he said. Fuck, we got stuck on this point hard, didn't we? My interpretation was he was saying my movie
and Ben's
is
just
so
sitting there
big.
watching the spectacle.
That's great. Can I watch this in a cinema so we can have a shared experience?
My movie is so big and expansive, and the scale of Dune is so big. You couldn't possibly experience the majesty, and he did use the word majesty, by the way, which is why I think he's a fucking wanker.
I don't disagree with him.
The majesty of my movie in your shitty home cinema. And I disagree.
He didn't say shitty. He might have used majesty,
didn't say
but
shitty.
I'm sure he didn't say shitty.
He didn't say shitty. But that was the point he was making. It had less to do with your mates. It had less to do with the other people in the room. It had more to do with if the screen ain't filling your peripherals, then you're not getting the full experience.
I think we had very different interpretations of what he meant when he said that.
Maybe.
I think we did, and I think this is where our disagreement is coming from.
This is an interesting thing as well. I think, I think this has been an age-long thing in the world ever since the advent of like television, VHS, being able to watch things at home. When VHS first came out, exactly the same thing happened. Theaters thought they were just going to, disappear.
Be irrelevant.
Nobody would want to go and watch a film anymore in the theater because they can watch it at home. They can rent the movie and all that kind of stuff. But the cinemas are still around. Like that aspect of home versus the cinematic experience it's been around for ages. I think yes, with the advent of like technology, our TVs are bigger, our home theaters are more advanced, all that kind of stuff. It'll always come down to what you want as an individual in terms of watching a film. And then back in the day, and still today, but not as much with things like HBO Max and films coming out to the dual release that is nowadays, like cinematic and also online. If you do want to see a film first, you tend to have to go to the cinema to watch it, and there is that that aspect. Or you wait for the digital release, or you wait for the Blu-ray. So for me personally, if I was going to, to say what I'm a lazy motherfucker, I will watch something in my living room because I want to see the film. So if there's an opportunity to watch it at home, what if there was a dual release? If Spider-Man is on at the cinema, then I personally with this conversation, we'll probably watch it at home because I'm lazy and I can just click a button and there it is. You know what I mean? That's why I watched, The Matrix at home, because I wasn't interested in going to see it at the cinema, but I wanted to see it.
But you're selective about it, right? You know when there's a movie on that you want to see on the big screen. I think that does play to what Dan's saying.
Yeah, I went and saw Spider-Man at the cinema because I wanted to go and see Spider-Man as soon as possible.
You're prepared to get dressed up out of your pajamas, which you can now work in for most people.
Exactly, yeah.
And join the general public and risk Omicron.
So it'll always...
That's a conscious choice.
Yeah, exactly. Nowadays, 100%. But, because, fuck me, we've all had the bad experiences in the cinema with, like, the person next to you on their phone or somebody not understanding and talking or whatever. So I think it just comes down to personal taste at the end of the day. I think filmmakers can, stand on their soapbox and go, I'm making this amazing visual spectacle for you, and it's going to be, you've got to see it at the cinema. That's all well and good, and that's what we want at the end of the day. We want to have, an experience when we watch a film. We want to be taken away. We want to forget our lives and be soaked up into the story, and if filmmakers obviously want us to go
watch a guy take a shit in a video game, sorry, Dan.
Hey, that wasn't my point, by the way.
That's a callback to last episode.
So, it was always going to be down to the individual, like what is the best experience we will have. For me, I'm lazy. I'm happy to watch it at home.
And look, I want to correct the record. I have misquoted Denis Villeneuve. What he actually said was, frankly, to watch Dune on a television, the best way I can compare it is to drive a speedboat in your bathtub. For me, it's ridiculous. It's a movie that has been made as a tribute to the big screen experience. Now, I would have accepted the last sentence. I maybe would have accepted the start, because the emotion, to me, the emotional content there is, I've made a movie as a spectacle, And he did. Dune is a spectacle. It's a very visual experience. It's very vivid in the visual storytelling kind of component. But to say watching it on your home television, it's just a very insulting sentence to anybody to say, my movie's too good for your fucking home theater. And it's not home theater, it's just your TV. I just think it's a really wanky thing for a director to say. And I think that's kind of why we got hung up on it. And I say we, by the way, Dan, because it's not just me. You know what's going to kill cinema? You know what's going to kill cinema? It won't be big screen TVs. It won't be OLED. It won't be the fucking 100-inch TV. No, it's going to get small. It's going to be a pair of sunglasses that is that fucking big in real terms, but will completely fill your visual field of view.
You're still talking about technology. You hung up on technology, not talking about an experience.
But he's not talking about your mates. He's not talking about other people.
I'm not talking about my mates either. I don't go to the films with the films.
Yeah,
I go to the film
like
for the film.
Yeah, okay, but the visual storytelling experience that he's talking about in his statement, it's like a driving a speedboat in your bathtub. What he's saying is, my picture is so big that it doesn't fit on your shitty little TV at home.
But he also talks about a tribute to cinema.
To the big screen experience, the big screen.
Big screen.
So he's very explicit in what he's actually saying. He's talking about the big fucking screen at the front of the cinema, right? That's all he's talking about.
I think you're literally reading that again.
Yeah, potentially. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Let's never speak of this again.
I think this whole idea of cinema dying, cinema's not going to die. It's never going to die.
I think
it will be a generational thing, and there will be, the generations will pass, and as technology, yeah, sure, but I don't know. It would have died already, or nearly died.
I don't think so. I don't think, just in terms of Joe Average, no insult intended in this statement, but because I'm not much different in terms of my 7-year-old TV, but Joe Average is watching TV on a 55 to 75-inch TV with a soundbar. There's a big jump from that to a cinema in terms of the capability of the technology. And we're not just talking about tech for the sake of tech, by the way. It's the ability for the technology to tell the story effectively.
It's also an experience to go out and see it move.
So, what's your third beer?
No,
we're not getting back into it.
It's about the screen. It's not
that I disagree with you. I'm just going to
sound, and it's this, and it's that. It's not. It's an experience.
Yeah, maybe making the time out of your day. I can see your point, and you have to take time out of your day in a different way than just turning something on Netflix. As you said, Ben, you're lazy. I'm lazy. You just you roll up on your couch. I got no idea what I'm going to watch, but it's Friday night. I'm half cut. I'll turn on Apple Movies and see what's available to rent. You're not making a conscious decision to watch that movie half the time. These days, it's just what looks sexy on the screen in front of you, right? As opposed to, I'm going to set aside, 4 hours in 3 days hence, and I'm going to book tickets. I'm going to take time out of my life to go and watch Spider-Man at the movies. That's a very different experience because you are setting aside time. You're making an appointment in your calendar for when you're going to go watch the movie. I think that's actually more the experience that you're getting at, Dan.
No, it's not more the experience. It's exactly what I'm talking about.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. My understanding is now more aligned with yours. How's that? What's your third beer? Daniel? You've insisted on calling everyone by their extended name.
Yeah, it's in honor of the man that is absent. It's a Major Tom.
That's
it's
perfect.
A New World IPA. It's from Dainton. It's 2.5. Oh wait, is it
2.5%? Really?
2.5%. It was super hopped. And Ben, I think I worked out. We had a little bit of a discussion on this, Pete, while you were heading back, so it was off recording. It mellowed out a little bit, Ben, in the crazy dank hop character that it had when I first cracked it. But I worked out why it seemed so unbalanced. Is because there's nothing, because it's 2.5%. There's very little extra malt body there to balance it all out. So it was super dank, and it was the couple of mouthfuls there. It was like drinking a big glass of BO, but it mellowed out, and the hop character there they must have dry hopped it like crazy with some Simcoe or something like that. No, it's not on me. Of course, it's not. 2.5%. It was really, really super hoppy, and for
that's impressive.
That lighter beer, it was probably the hoppiest light beer I've ever had.
Mm. How many pixels?
2.5%, mate. It's like making love in a canoe. It's fucking close to water.
I don't know. 3.5.
Dan's doing good solid 3.5s tonight. He's a 3.5.
Yeah, I'm writing them down as 3.25 because he goes 3.5. It's 3.25. What are you drinking, Ben?
I'm still on the same beer, guys. I've only had 2. Sorry, no third beer.
No, don't be silly. We're gonna have a fourth, but so
no, I'm not gonna have a fourth. I'm gonna cash out in like 10 minutes because I got to be up at 5 o'clock.
Holy crap! Yeah, wow.
All right. So my third and apparently final beer is
sorry about that.
Not at all. Primal Stream by Garage Project.
Oh, nice!
And the can art is spectacular.
Yeah,
it is.
Awesome.
It is really beautiful. Can
Turtles
art.
flying through the purple surf.
Yeah. Reawaken your senses with this esoteric twist on the East Coast haze craze. Primal Stream melds hazy IPA with Foudre, Foudre, aged wild workshop sour beer in a lush, energetic rush of sweet and sour, where the elevated aromatics of Citra, Simcoe, Strata, and Sabro entwine with cleansing, juicy fruit tart flavors. Welcome all to the new age of IPA. I got to say, they talk a big game. 6.7%. It is a fucking spectacular beer. I can't even tell you if it's it reads like a hazy, right? So there's enough protein in it to kind of definitely kind of move into that hazy IPA space or a New England IPA. But the flavor profile is like, you remember the old what were the ice creams? The tropical fruit juice ice cream, not ice creams, ice blocks. It's got that really, it's like drinking orange juice, but with that really tartness that you get from orange, but the real sweetness at the end. Like a Tropicana, I can't remember the name of the ice blocks, but it's the perfect description for it. I'm surprised.
Perfect description if you knew what the name of
what the fuck I was saying.
To say. Yeah. That thing that I can't remember that you want everybody to understand that it tastes like that.
It's delicious.
But you know,
when you can remember what that is.
If you drink pure 100% no added sugar orange juice that's freshly squeezed, you get that real tart citrus hit, but you also get the sweetness from the natural fructose in orange juice.
Yeah.
And that's what that is. The thing that surprised me is the sweetness. There's a lot of residual sugar in that beer.
Garage Project. They know what they're doing, those guys.
Oh,
don't they?
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. They're great.
100%.
Yeah.
That's got to be a 4.75 out of 5.
Ooh.
The fucking worst thing that Untapped ever did was introduce quarter points.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
They were half points for a long time, then they had to go and introduce quarter points. Yep.
Just to add some nuance.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, so you've got 10 minutes left to go. Do you want to wrap? We're going to have to skip Trailer Trash, but that's okay. It can wait.
We can cover it next time. I think we've touched base on a lot of good things tonight.
Very quickly.
Please.
The Halo trailer. Did you guys see the Halo trailer?
I didn't.
It was the only one I didn't see.
Holy crap. Okay, well, definitely watch that in time for your next podcast because it is incredible. Yeah.
It seems very true to the games.
I reckon they're going to go for a Mandalorian thing. He's never going to take his helmet off. I haven't played the game.
I was thinking that, I was thinking that. Well, in the games, it's first person. You don't even see the Master Chief outside of the kind of cinematic sequences in between it. Mind you, I have to say this: I haven't played Halo since the third game. So I don't know what it's been doing over the last 37 iterations of the game since, but certainly in the first 3, outside of the cinematics, when the Master Chief always has the helmet on, you never see his face. Yeah, I got the same impression.
God, it's on Paramount Plus. It's on another streaming service.
Which in Australia, I think, comes to binge pretty quickly.
Oh, does it? Okay.
I think.
Binge seems to be, Binge seems to take a lot of the stuff. Peacemaker's on Binge at the moment. That's good fun.
Been loving that series.
Yeah,
I'm surprised. I was really expecting to watch the first episode and just go, it's another DC fucking flop. But I've actually really thoroughly enjoyed it.
It's just
they
ridiculous.
Have walked the line between stupid and good so perfectly.
Yeah.
And you can tell they could easily trash the whole series with one extra line of dialogue or one extra stupid thing that happened. That's a perfect example of an Adam Sandler film without being Adam Sandler stupid.
Yeah, true. I think
that's how I think of it.
James Gunn knows what he's doing. It's interesting. And
he's
it's
pushing
interesting
it, though.
to take that character as well out of the new Suicide Squad movie and do a spin-off was quite interesting. It works. It works really well.
It does. I've smiled at a lot of comedy in TV series and movies recently, but it takes a lot to actually make me laugh out loud in the privacy of my own home where I live alone. Peacemaker has made me laugh out loud 5 or 6 times so far.
So if you were part of that big cinema shared experience, like the audience would make you laugh together.
How did I know that was going to come back to hit me?
The fantastic environment that people all enjoying something together would make you laugh out loud.
Yeah. The last episode of Peacemaker had this line that made me laugh out loud. That was when they were arguing about the PowerPoint presentation, and Peacemaker, I can't remember what the leading line was, but Peacemaker was like, I Googled it. And she's like, no, somebody said, I Googled it. And he turns around and goes, oh, so you're smarter than Google? That's that kind of like line. It's just so good. And
there's so many good one-liners in that series. It actually reminds me quite a lot of, never mind, carry on. I can't remember the Army of the Dead.
Oh, yeah. He's channeling his Bruce Campbell and some stuff in that.
He really is.
I just like the fact
Army of Darkness.
Army of Darkness.
Thank you.
Army of the Dead was the Zack Snyder thing.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, my bad. Yeah. I knew while I was saying it that it was wrong, but I didn't know what it was, so I just went with it. It is borderline that silly and like not silly, stupid, but it's what makes the series work. Yeah. I mean, the premise is the fucking butterflies, right?
Yeah.
Like it's an alien species of butterflies living inside people's brains. It's out there to start with.
It's interesting. Yeah. Yeah, it's good. It's
well
good.
worth watching, though. It's fucking funny.
I'd like to see
and
where it
they're
goes.
only 30-minute. I think they're 30, 40-minute episodes. They're not too heavy.
Yeah.
In terms of time investment.
Yeah. It's a fun watch, for sure. For sure.
All right. I think that's probably going to wrap us, to be honest.
Yep. I'm sorry, I got to call it.
No, that's all right, man. You've got to be up early tomorrow. That sounds horrendous, being up at 5. I didn't realise that 5 a.m. existed. I just thought it was something.
No, I was going to say, there's only one 5 per day, right? It's in the afternoon when you knock off work.
I'm lucky I've only got one 5 a.m. start this week. So
wow.
It's usually 2. Sometimes it can be 3, and 3's a real slog.
Oh, my God.
Life of a brewer.
Oh, man. Bringing joy to the people, Dan. That's what you're doing, man.
Yeah, that's it.
To the people.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ben, for joining us.
Thank you for having me, guys. Thank you for the invitation. It's been great to hang out. I'm sorry that I'm in my in-laws at the moment in their deepest, darkest dungeon, so I'm sorry it's not really...
Not at all. I hope we don't have to discard this episode, so we're going to let the upload just sit there for a while.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
But it's been a pleasure having you, and we will come out and film from Bar 89 sometime soon.
Please do. You're definitely welcome.
I think we really should.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Perfect backdrop for it, too.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.